Happy Saturday, everybody. We are back. Sorry for the late start. Traffic is a lot different on the weekend than it is during the week. And Ben and I both had some extreme difficulties getting here.
Yep.
I'm actually going to move that monitor around so we can look at it.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, essentially, we've each got quite a bit of things that we had not gotten to talk about yet. There are a couple other people that have some stragglers, but it's like they each have like 1 or 2 games, whereas I have a list of 7 or 8 games. Ben, you've probably got twice that, right?
No, I think I've got about 5.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So it's not too bad, and a lot of them are quick. So.
And then Brandon hasn't been around to talk much at all, so he's got a ton of things that maybe we've talked a little bit about, but he can share maybe some differences in the demos he played. But I'm gonna give Brandon a second to get things moved around. But yeah, I mean this E3 was definitely a different one with the public being there for sure.
Yeah.
The mornings walking in were especially amazing. Just to go into South Hall or West Hall and realize like I can't actually walk across the hall right now like I'm used to. Like I need to get to the upper levels and look down at this massive crowd that's going all the way through the lobby, all the way out the door to the street.
Yeah.
It was something crazy. But even though the mornings were that crazy, I feel like as the week went on, like the halls themselves weren't that bad. Like walking around was not bad at all. And I think it's because a lot of the publishers just started figuring out where to cap lines and says like, hey, you can't get in line for this anymore.
Yeah, it definitely got a lot better as the week went on. That first day was easily the worst. It was just the most packed I had ever seen E3 in the 4 years that I had gone. But the lines, I would say, even on Thursday, were always pretty long. And that was the one unfortunate thing is I feel like every E3 I usually get to play a few things that I'm not scheduled for, whereas this year it was like, nope, I pretty much only played what I was scheduled to see. So that was a big difference.
Yeah, that is definitely the thing. There's so many times in E3 where I would just walk through the Sony booth and see what game nobody was playing, and that is not a thing at E3 this year. Brandon, I know you were running around a lot. What was your kind of perspective
so far? I remember the first time I was at Comic-Con where I thought I could maybe die right now in this situation.
Yeah.
Like it would take an ill-timed explosion sound effect or someone to yell fire from really any direction right now, and things could get really dangerous really quickly. And like that happens. Like I actually had that in Knott's Berry Farm one time. Like it just, you don't know where humans are going to go, and when you have too many humans in one space, it can get a little dicey. And it was interesting, like going through like 5 of those at a time. Like you're like, oh, I'll just take this route, and like, nope, you can't go down that hallway. And it's like, well, I'll back around this area, and it's like, nope, you're blocked there. And it was interesting that it was just on Tuesday. I felt like Tuesday was definitely the worst day.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if this needs to be a necessary transition for E3, I kind of look at this year as like maybe the growing pains needed. Like I know Damiani was frustrated that like it doesn't look like they're going to change the format of like how many days they're going to have and who's allowed into what day. But
yeah,
like,
it's still early.
Surely they learned something. Like surely this didn't work out exactly the way they wanted it to.
Yeah.
But
I was definitely grateful for the experience that I had, and it was like, it's like don't try to go the normal routes between halls. Like take the upper concourse level where it's just business meeting rooms, and then I think how is getting to your 10 a.m. because I know you had a 10 a.m. to do. Did you have trouble with that?
I did because on the first day, just getting through Nintendo was rough because you'd be going and it was just a giant circle of people, and getting through because like Sony, where we needed to go to check in, was behind that. And so it was like trying to scout out the best path forward, and it took a little bit of time. And I think I was like a couple of minutes late, but it wasn't too terribly bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where I don't even think I did it intentionally, but the things that I had scheduled for like right when the doors opened were in like private meeting rooms upstairs. And I was super grateful for that because I didn't have to worry about the show floor until like all of that madness had cleared out. So that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping in mind for everybody's schedules next year. It's just like, okay, where are the appointments going to be and what times?
The thing that you did with the scheduling that was so nice is I always felt like I had a pretty appropriate amount of buffer for nearly everything, where I had at least like 30 minutes to get to the next thing, and that was a lifesaver. So,
and that's the stuff that's easy to forget. It's like,
Right.
I need to physically travel,
Right.
you know, and like, you know, most of the time for a lot of these appointments, like State of Decay 2, for example, like I stuck around for 5 minutes and, you know, asked them a couple questions afterward, and, you know, there was like a little bit of space of time. So,
Right.
It's nice to have that breathing room. Pro tip for anybody going to E3 next year or going to PAX or really anything else, The Crew 2 is one of the few games that I actually like queued up for and got in line to go check out because it was a small line. I'm like, I have an hour before my next appointment, and this would be an interesting game to. I like flying planes, and I really wanted to play a lot of the first Crew. And I get in line and I go up to the end, and he's like, "Oh, just go in the back there by that the one TV." And there were two guys back to back that had their backpacks on. And they were playing opposite each other, and like there was just no, like the backpacks were just like switched together. I'm like, I physically cannot get.
Yep.
So like I tap one guy in the shoulder, and he's like, okay, and he like moves forward like an inch, and I'm like, I can't like, and I don't want to like duck down and like hit you both in the posterior. It's like just take the backpack off, maybe put it like in between your legs or right down by your legs. Just know that people got to get back.
Sure.
Yeah,
That one used to me. I gotta.
Well,
kick out
and
that
I think for E3 specifically, if we're going to give out some pro tips, don't go to the bathrooms in the halls themselves. If you can at all wait, there are bathrooms, again, up on that upper business area that are just practically empty.
Find the secret bathrooms.
Relatively clean, and it's pretty nice. The other thing I noticed, which surprised me, is South Hall was quiet, essentially. I mean, you could still hear stuff, but it wasn't like past years. The screens from like Activision and Bethesda and Ubisoft, they would just be all just blaring like into the middle of the hall, like trying to grab everybody's attention.
That was a trend I noticed overall, where it seemed like more of the booths were closed off instead of these sprawling open spaces that we're used to seeing at E3, and I thought that was an interesting change. Yeah.
So, but I definitely felt the difference in South Hall without the mega Konami and EA booths there. There was a lot more space on the edges for smaller things. There's even like a little shop for people to buy like beach towels and like other video game knickknacks. There was a jazz band playing video game music off on the side. Definitely feel the lack of some of those publishers that aren't actually on the floor this year.
Last tip: bring water.
Oh yeah,
goodness.
Because the times where I needed water, going and buying it, like there was a huge line just to buy one little thing, and the vending machines are sold out like on the first day. So yeah, definitely bring water. Stay hydrated. It's important.
Cool. So let's kick it off for some game impressions. I'll go first so Brandon can cue up the B-roll.
Ooh.
But one game I saw this week that I was pleasantly surprised with, and actually I had quite a few of those moments. Games that I didn't know whether I would care about or not. But is Battle Chasers Nightwar.
Yeah, you walked up to me and like specifically said, "Hey, this is super cool and worth paying attention to."
Yeah. So this is I didn't even realize this. I guess Battle Chasers is a comic. And it's Joe Madera, who also did the art for the Darksiders games. And that style here, I think, comes through so much better than it ever did in Darksiders. I feel like there's just so much more detail and richness in the game. And then the characters... they all like all of their items and stuff are also like interchangeable. So like you actually physically see the weapons on the characters, and there's this one girl that has like, what I saw originally with was like these big boxing gloves, and then I saw another shot where she had just like more typical gauntlets. And so it's nice to have that much detail in there. But basically what it is they refer to it as a JRPG, which is funny because it's obviously not Japanese developers. It's THQ Nordic. That's publishing, but still, it gives you a feel for kind of what it is. So, you've got an overworld map, you've got dungeons, which are randomly generated. And then you have turn-based battles with your line of guys on this side and the line of enemies on the other side. One of the things that I found really interesting about the combat system is, from what I can tell, at least in the demo where we were at in the game, is that there was never an option that just said fight. Like they had direct attacks of various kinds, and then they had abilities of various kinds, and then they had their burst moves.
Are you selecting these commands from a menu?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was never just a simple fight. Like there's all of these different types of strikes with various advantages. So you could go for a more straightforward attack, or you could go for a stab that does some bleeding damage, or different types of slashes based on the characters. And then what you have, so they have kind of a limit break-ish kind of thing that they called burst, I believe. And there's 3 tiers. I never was patient enough to let it go all the way up to 3 to see if there were differences. I don't know if that's just the amount of bursts you can do, or if they stack into more powerful attacks. But the burst meter is shared by all 3 of your characters. So that actually became part of the strategy where, in a lot of these demos, the developers will try to guide you to doing certain things.
Yes.
And he was telling me, he's like, oh, you can use your burst now. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm going to wait for the next character to use it, because the next character, his burst is going to heal all of my party, and I really need that healing right now. So I'm not going to waste it on an attack and then be struggling. And I was actually pleasantly surprised too that the boss fight that they had in the demo did put up a good challenge, which a lot of demos don't. They just put everything on easy mode for you.
Right. Basically, anything you do, you're going to be successful.
Yeah. And the boss itself had a burst. So I find that interesting as well, to see if there's I don't know if there'll be any ways to mitigate it or not, but it's something you have to be prepared for, because depending on the boss, that could be something that would just wipe you out.
Was the boss burst just a lot of damage that you had to prepare for?
No, actually, what the boss did, so when the fight started, there was the boss, and then it had 2 ads on the sides. And when it did its burst, it sacrificed its ads to completely refill its health and buff itself.
Okay. So the idea was you want to kill those ads so the boss doesn't have that available to do.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. I like that.
Yeah. And then they have a pretty clear initiative list on the top left.
Sure.
And then your abilities kind of work like old Final Fantasy spells, so that when you pick an ability like a healing or some other kind of spell, you don't just do that immediately. It goes into the initiative list, and you have to wait for them to finish casting that, basically.
Cool.
I should say what we're discussing.
I didn't see a whole lot of the dungeon layouts themselves, but you could see the enemies on the screen so that you could avoid them. They did have kind of Tales-ish dialogue scenes that popped in when you're walking around.
Was it like a prompt, hey, this conversation is available now in the exact same way that it is with Tales?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I can't remember if they were avoidable or not, but yeah, they definitely the characters came in over top of the dungeon map. I think they were. I think different party members have different dungeon skills that can be used there. That let them maybe find secrets more easily and things like that.
Any indication of... So how many people do you have in your party at any given time?
There were 3 people in the party. And what is really nice is that they were different sizes. They weren't just all models that were just kind of interchangeable. The guy and the girl were similar strengths, but then there was also this big kind of golem-like creature that was easily twice the size of both of them. So that was pretty nice to see that. Trying to think what else there was. You
mentioned that your different teammates have different strikes that have different effects on the enemy. Is there any incentive to kind of mix and match those? Can you, if somebody does a specific strike, can somebody else capitalize on that and do something else, sort of like a break, topple, daze system from Xenoblade, anything like that?
I didn't see anything specifically along those lines, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay.
Because, like I said, everyone had at least 2 options there, and I think, it's all 3 pretty frequently. And then I guess the only other thing is that the overworld looks like pretty cool. It looks like a storybook illustration, slightly different art style, a little bit more simplified.
Gotcha.
But it's a nice looking game, and so it's coming out on pretty much everything. I think just a few months, like October 3rd. Yeah. So Xbox, PS4, PC, and Switch. And so now I'm just kind of like on that edge of like, do I want PC for like the max crispness of that art, or do I want it on Switch so I can take it with me? Because I really like turn-based RPGs now.
This feels like a dynamite Switch game.
Yeah,
I played this at
Taking
Judges
it with
Week,
you
and I didn't
yeah.
think about it, but like, oh boy, especially since it looked like it looked at a really good pace of like, and now I'm moving on to the next step, and now I'm gonna get in this dungeon and try this. You know, it wasn't like I just got lost and couldn't get to a stopping point, like because of the menu, how you move to different locations. You know, how you like get a sense of how long the dungeons are, and just the casualness of just kicking back with a handheld device and playing a turn-based role-playing game is like, three people. How common is that in turn-based, Ben? Like just 3 people in a party?
It's not that uncommon.
It's not that uncommon. I would say 3, 4 average.
Okay.
Yeah. Rarely do you get more than 4. I feel like.
A couple Final Fantasies here.
Yeah,
and there.
Final Fantasy IV had 5, but I can't think of many.
I think we should start a petition. That's what I think we should do. Easy Allies.
To get 5?
No,
Go
to
5?
get every JRPG on Switch. From here until the end of that console's life, every JRPG comes.
Well, speaking of JRPGs, you probably got some.
I got a few.
My voice chat. Sorry.
I got a few. The first one that I want to talk about, I'll mix it up between JRPGs and non-JRPGs as best I can. Give it some sort of variety. I'm a little bit frustrated because I played Etrian Odyssey V and Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology, but Huber and I made a mistake. So Huber came with me to the Atlas booth to just see Yakuza, and then he had to bounce, and then I was there to see the other stuff as well. But we got so into switching off between Kiwami and Yakuza 6 that I think we went like way over time for our appointment. And so they had to take me out of the room. They're like, hey, sorry, we have to get the next people in here, but here's a DS. You can spend like 5 minutes playing each of these. And so you have these huge handheld RPGs that I got to spend a little bit of time with, but I don't have much to say just because
is Radiant Historia just like a deluxe or remaster of that game?
We'll get there. We'll get to Radiant Historia. But let's talk about Etrian Odyssey V. So Etrian Odyssey V, what's cool about it, what's immediately different, is it seems like they're going out of their way to define the characters a little bit more. Traditionally with Etrian Odyssey, there is a story and there are characters, but your party is basically like you go to a guild and you're just like, okay, I'm going to make all of these different classes, and they're just going to be, because I can customize them and because I can name them, they don't have a lot of personality to them. And then what they did is they did Etrian Odyssey Untold, where they remade Etrian Odyssey 1 and they remade Etrian Odyssey 2. And they were remakes, but there were specific named characters with dialogue and in their own story. And so it was kind of a break off of regular Etrian Odyssey to have more of a focused kind of game, to get different people in that maybe wanted a little bit more context, maybe wanted a little bit more personality. They're kind of bringing some of that Untold stuff into Etrian Odyssey V. And the way that they're doing that is, unlike you just going to the guild and being able to make any class, you could still do that, but classes are now specific to races. So first you pick a race, and then you can pick a class within that race. And the different races are the Earthren, they're basically human. The Lunaria, they're elves. The Therian, they're beast-like monsters. And the Brony, I believe that's how you say it, they're dwarves,
Bronies?
basically. So yeah, humans, elves, beast-like people, and then dwarves, kind of what you would expect. But by sort of segmenting the classes to specific races, there's a lot more talking now. You're still naming the characters. You still have a lot of control over their customization, but they have voices. They have more going on. It seemed like the story to me, the little bit of sense that I got, is that you're going to be learning quite a bit about these different races, and so that could be really cool. And the other thing that I want to say is it's still on 3DS, like Etrian Odyssey IV was, but it's a pretty noticeable visual upgrade. I'm not sure it would come across as much in the trailers, but everything just looked a little bit cleaner, a little bit sharper. The UI was a little bit easier to get around. Etrian Odyssey is a series that has a lot of information. All of your skills do different things, have different effects. And even in the 5 minutes that I was playing, it helps that I've played other Etrian Odysseys, but it was all easy to look at and understand immediately, which is something, like any game that you're going to be spending 100 hours in, you want the interface to just be as clean and sharp as possible. And it looked good on that front.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, and you also have race-specific skills as well. So not only do you want to think about what classes you're going to be bringing in and how those skills affect battle, and you want to balance that, but you also want to think about what the races can do specifically. So that's cool.
So diversity, right? Like you're not gonna want to just stick to one or two races. Like
no, you're gonna want diversity. And other Etrian Odyssey games have done a good job of this, and I'm curious to see how 5 does it as well. So you can have 5 people in your party, and you have so many different options that you always wish you had like one extra one. And to me, that's the mark of good design, where you can never make a perfect party. You can just make like a pretty good one. And you have to figure out what you're okay with not being able to take on all that successfully when you encounter it, and I think that's cool. But yeah, I was mad. I wanted to play like a whole dungeon. I feel like I needed that to get a good sense and like call out specific skills and things like that. But based on my limited time, that is all I can tell you about Etrian Odyssey V.
Do we want to go around?
Yeah, let's go around.
You start, and we'll just ding ding ding.
Sure.
See who runs out first.
You go.
See who runs out of steam. Well, I need you to check me, because a lot of this stuff that I saw, I know other people on the team have also seen. Have you talked about Need for Speed Payback yet, Bloodworth?
No, I didn't realize it was anywhere to play until the very end of the show when I saw it in the corner of Microsoft's booth.
Oh, it was also at EA Play, and that's where I played right after their press conference. Oh boy, I'm gonna do a couple hours of talking. We'll see if I can pull this off. So I got to play the demo that they showed at the EA press conference, and I got to do a race through the same environment. Cool. And I think that game looks gorgeous. I've played Need for Speeds in the past. Obviously, racing is not like one of the forefront of the genres that I seek.
Right.
But the one thing that he said that like my ears kind of perked up is he's like, you say open world, and I'm like, okay, but I'm curious how that works. Like, some people claim things are like open world. Like, I do agree Witcher is open world, but like it is multiple maps. So there's always the question of like, how's it structured? How big are these areas? Is it border to border? Something like Horizon, with like little dungeon pockets here and there, or are there multiple areas I can go to? And he used the term true open world, which I thought was selling
not like
something,
those other
for sure.
open world games.
Well, but I mean, meaning that like maybe the open world I'm thinking of just like roads connect to stuff, but like maybe I'm kind of discouraged from going off road.
Yeah, and I think that's what was it? The Hot Pursuit. It had a large open world that you could explore, but you were almost always stuck on the roads. You couldn't just like venture off across the map somewhere.
And I think even in the first trailer when they showed off, you can see them just kind of like kicking up dust in the desert. And it's kind of like based on Vegas, but isn't Vegas. And so like you obviously have lots of open canyons to run through. And didn't do a lot of that, but he could tell he was doing the demo differently and definitely cut some corners on the roads to try to catch up to some targets. But in regards to the demo that they showed during the EA press conference, one of the only negatives that I felt was it was interesting because you can like slam people, which I've done in so many Need for Speeds before and other games. You just like want to like ram some guy into a pole, do some awesome slow-mo cinematic to like watch him bail out, and I had to like slow down and catch up to him. It was like I gotta get to that truck, and this car goes super fast, but then I would go flying past those guys, and it's like, well, now even if I'm slow down and I'm next to him, now I'm driving really slow because I've like slowed my speed. Right. It's kind of tricky to like slow and then speed up enough that like when I hit them it would do enough damage. And the whole thing was timed, and so like that took a little bit to adjust, and I wonder if like it was not the best thing, I think, to demonstrate the strengths of something like this, where you're just like freaking out to be fast enough to get to something, the Need for Speed. And it was interesting that the strategy was to be like slower than I wanted to be in a Need for Speed game to achieve the goals.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of that when they were streaming the game right after the press conference, where just like okay, he just kind of stopped and waited for the AI car to catch up to him.
Right.
Because the objective wasn't just to get to the truck, it was to take out the cars first. So hopefully they see that now and start adjusting it to make that not such a weird thing.
But I did like the switch between cars when she like flies out the back of the truck,
Right.
and all of a sudden you're in this completely different vehicle that controls differently, has different speeds. Obviously, they're setting up some big confrontation between her and the other cops. Like, that's not the end of that mission. But I think that could be interesting, especially if you're setting it up kind of like a Fast and Furious homage, to suddenly change your perspective to another car. You know, just kind of like be interesting to take over a car ride as like, you know, traffic's coming at you and you have to think really quickly and make split-second decisions.
Yeah.
Speaking of like thinking quickly, something that we saw in the trailer is you had a point where you had like burning rubble on the ground, and it seemed like you kind of had to weave through that. Was what you were racing on ever a factor to, like, did it change suddenly and you had to react to it, or was it pretty straightforward and it's just like, no, I'm just focused on the guys more than I'm focused on the road?
They had the bit where you bump into the back of the truck in the tunnel, and then he drops some barrels out the back and blows up a bunch of stuff. So like there was some wreckage that you had to avoid. And I think that would. What is the game I'm thinking of that had all these just horrible, like the planes were crashing and buildings were falling over? It was like,
I know what you're thinking of.
You could activate
Split
like
second.
split
Yeah.
second. Yeah, actually it says
I like
split second.
that
I'm
game.
like, it can't be split second because that's the thing I just said. But yeah, I think that would be a strength of this game to have just completely over the top stuff.
Yeah.
That you got to avoid. Maybe not like doing like jumps off of buildings and stuff, but that was interesting. And I enjoyed my time in Need for Speed. Again, I got to do a race, which was not shown, but it was on the same map, so you can just imagine doing that map multiplayer against people.
In that, did you notice anything like weird or funky with the AI or like extreme rubber banding or anything that would like bug people?
No, I only got one. I only got one chance at it. So like any bumping into stuff that I did, I figured that was my fault.
For
so,
sure.
Was not able to perform admirably enough to challenge the AI.
Were you doing any takedowns on the AI in that race?
No.
Okay.
Just pretty straightforward racing.
I feel like Need for Speed is a series where every third game I get really into, and then I'm just kind of out of it for the next 3 games. Yeah, and I think Payback might be that. I like my favorite Needs for Speed games are the ones where they're closest to Burnout, basically.
Sure.
So, because that's all I'm really looking for is the next Burnout.
The message they're trying to get across.
Right.
I think just please amp that up.
Yeah.
The takedowns are so Burnout that it's definitely seems to be where the influence is coming from.
Characters seem kind of generic too in the cutscenes that I saw, so it'd be nice to like spice them up a little bit,
Yeah.
add a little more drama, or don't even,
Yeah.
don't lean on it too hard and just kind of let me build up their character. And
Yeah, I feel like they're trying. They're trying to have characters there, but keep it somewhat minimal, because like we saw on a lot of the scenes, like they weren't really getting close in on their faces or anything like that. It's just like another voice in a car talking at you in a way.
I feel like Need for Speed has occasionally done trying way too hard super well, where they're like, isn't this the coolest dude ever? And you're like, no, he's super lame, but he's so lame that I'm kind of into it. It's like you can't even believe what these characters are saying.
It's a fine
to
line,
each other.
fingers
It is.
crossed,
It
yeah.
is a fine line, yeah, for sure.
So this Need for Speed.
Cool.
Mr. Bloodworth. I'm gonna turn off that mic because there's no reason for that. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Crash the stream, but it's next direction.
So yeah, another one that I was kind of surprised by, because I thought it would just be essentially, like another. I thought it was gonna be very similar to Crackdown 3, in which you just go around blowing stuff up and not care. But it was Agents of Mayhem.
Oh yeah, I really wanted to play this.
Yeah, from the Saints Row devs, and this game has so much detail and so many systems going on that she was explaining to me while I was playing that I could not absorb it all.
I feel like that's a weird thing to say for a game that, yeah, okay.
She was explaining a lot of depth to me, and then, but I guess just from the base gameplay, what I would probably relate it most closely to would be a single player Borderlands. To where you have all of these different agents, and they each have different strengths and weaknesses, and these, they build up a meter and like unleash these special attacks. But at the same time, you aren't locked into any of them. you go out with a party of 3 that you can swap between anytime, and then there's a total of 12 agents that you get throughout the story. And what's crazy is that you also have this whole base, and there's this whole base mechanic, almost like XCOM, to where you're building up your base, you're getting in resources, like you're making your team stronger. And they showed there's kind of like a mission map to where you can pick different spots around the globe and tell agents to go over here or go over there. But the trick is these aren't just like random soldiers or anything. Like, these are your same agents. So if you tell this guy to go to China, well, he's in China. He's not going to be on your team for the next mission you want to do. And then, and the other thing I saw with that is once I sent somebody out on a mission on the map, and then I went and I did my mission, and then when I came back, him being there and doing that mission, he had uncovered what's essentially like a random dungeon. So it wouldn't even like necessarily have been there for everybody that played the demo. And so then I was able to take another team to go out and do that dungeon because I had, invested time in investigating that region.
You mentioned that you sort of have these agents that you send out doing their own thing and you don't have access to them. But during the mission itself, since you have so many agents, are you just sort of locked to one agent per mission and then you can switch between missions, or is there any point where you can switch in?
So when you go on a mission, you pick a party, basically. You pick a party of 3 agents, and they each have there are certain skills that they have. So the one that they basically said that I wanted to have with me was a master programmer, because the master programmers are able to hack certain terminals that other people can't hack.
Yeah.
And the lower level terminals, they don't have to do the hacking minigame. You can just push Y to bypass the minigame. And so, yeah.
And there's more than one character that's a programmer.
Yeah, so there's just like different sets of skills that, I think like each character has like, a couple of, so you can mix and match like a balanced team on that end of things.
So with Volition, right, you would expect, and you mentioned Borderlands, you expected a healthy dose of humor. Did that come across through the demo? And were there a lot of quips and things like that?
For sure. I would call it a less shouty Borderlands on that sense. Like, it's still
shouty.
Shouty.
There, it's
It definitely was attitude. I played it at PSX last year. It definitely was some attitude.
It has a lot of that kind of thing. Like, some of the characters are just pretty ridiculous. Like, there were actually the big bad, they call it, like basically like the enemy's set of agents that we were going after was this guy called August Gant, and he's just an annoying pop star that has bought his way into Legion. He's just somehow decided that he wants to be a cool bad guy, and he spent the money to have them let him be part of their club. So it's kind of weird. And
I think I'm sending that guy away. Like, he's not going to be on my team. He can go.
No, that's the bad guy.
That's the bad
fighting.
guy. Okay.
Yeah, that's the guy
I missed that.
Yeah, and then like
that's good then.
The place that we actually the place that we went to on his mission was like a rave where all of his fans were coming, and he's also like big in the technology space or whatever. And so he had all of his fans like putting on these VR headsets for this cool little concert he did, but then the VR headsets were basically mind control devices. And so you were trying to shut down the mind control device while all of the fans were swarming you. And it was funny because it was like, the developers were like, oh, you're a good person. You're not actually shooting the fans. You're trying to avoid killing them. Well, it was like trying to shoot like the big enemies and not
E3 full of bad people, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. The characters that I played as definitely felt different. And again, with like there being so much and so overwhelming, it's like I don't even know if I remember everyone that I played as. But the 2 that stuck out most in my mind, there was kind of a guy who was just kind of like the sleek kind of silent assassin type, and he had a silenced pistol, And what he is able to do was he's able to just kind of shoot through enemies that have shields. And he also has this ability to where as you get more kills, then he has sort of this area of effect around him that sort of like debuffs and slows down enemies in that area. And the more kills that you get, the larger that gets, and the quicker you can just start taking guys out.
Cool.
And so it sort of stacks on each other. And then there's another guy who was sort of like a Colossus or Hulk type of enemy who had like freeze weapons, and that was really satisfying because you could like freeze guys and then just like backhand them across the room. So it felt pretty good. And then there is even though you go out on these missions, there is still like open world elements there as well.
Yes,
so, like,
I will stop you there, Blood.
Yeah.
In the demo that I played, it didn't. I mean, I believe that it was open world. It's like, yeah, I'm in a big city right now, but it's very centralized and like what kind of felt like a small section of the city. Like, was anything expansive? Did you get any cool like vistas of some big, neat open areas or?
I was a little bit more focused on the missions, but I could just, like, looking at the map, I could see where, like, a lot of those kind of extra objectives and checkpoints and stuff were.
Because vehicles were new this year. In the trailer that they showed, I was like, yeah, I don't think I could get in a car last time. So
yeah, so you can hijack vehicles like you can in Crackdown, but then you also have, in your base, there are different vehicles that you can set to be your vehicle,
cool.
And that you can just, like, call in to, like, warp to wherever you are at any time and hop in your vehicle. And so, like, there were speedier race car types of things. There's a big SUV that you could use to plow through other cars and stuff like that. So yeah, it's coming out fairly soon. I think in August. I didn't write that down, but yeah. So I think it's more interesting than I was expecting it to be.
Do you think at the end of the game there's going to be this big reveal where Agents of Mayhem is directly connected to Saints Row?
I think that there's already some loose ties to it. Yeah.
But I mean, like, are they going to go all in and just have some big surprise?
I don't know. I've never followed Saints Row, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal to me personally. But they did have one of the agents is basically like a Saints Row character.
Okay.
He's just like a gangster, basically. I think he dual wields pistols or something like that.
Sure. Cool.
It's like Agents of Mayhem is to Kitchen as Resident Evil is to...
Exactly. Along those sort of lines. But yeah, I knew it was loosely connected. I just wanted to know if they all of a sudden the Saints come in and you go together out on this mission.
But it's clear
it just seemed like something they would do.
Definitely Crackdown vibes.
Yeah.
Of just that kind of like not too jokey, not too serious, kind of right in the middle. The main point is run around, have fun, take on interesting enemies, do lots of action, lots of explosions.
You mentioned Crackdown. When I think of Crackdown, I think of just giant jumps. How is your mobility here? Like, do you have to rely on vehicles to get around quickly if you want to cover a lot of ground, or can your character move quite a lot on their own?
No, I think that they did have. I think they did have double jumps and like mid-air dashes and stuff like that. It is hard, like now that it's actually been a couple of days, it is hard to kind of separate some of those demos. It's like, wait, which of this memory is Crackdown and which of this memory is Agents of Mayhem? But yeah, there's definitely a bit of that in there.
Sure. My next one, I really wish Huber here was here specifically for a reason that I'll get into in a minute. But my next one is Total War Warhammer II. Played for about 25 minutes, and what I was really surprised by, and I think the big thing that immediately separates Total War Warhammer 2 from 1 is they're going much, much, much harder on the story. So like I said, I played for 25 minutes. The first like 10 minutes of that was just an elaborate cutscene explaining, here is what's going on in this game. And
this game is really fast after the last one.
Yeah,
it is. It's only
very
been
quick.
a little over a year.
Right, and in the battle itself, it was hard for me to parse like any major differences from the first game, but I think it's all about the setup. And so you have these different races. There's 4, I believe. There's the High Elves, Dark Elves, Lizardmen, and then there's one more that they haven't revealed yet. And there's basically this vortex that's causing all of this chaos, and all of these different factions, all of these different races are sort of competing with each other to get to the vortex and harness its power to either like increase its chaos and just mess everything up or get it under control. And yeah, there's much more of a focus with the story in general. In Total War Warhammer 1, it was kind of more of a sandbox story, a little bit more loose. But the mission itself, I think, was built specifically for Michael Huber because you were playing as lizard men. And basically these high elves have invaded your home, and you are saying, no, I don't want none of that. So playing as these giant lizard men and these giant armored sort of dinosaurs that they use, they've tamed these beasts. You go and you're like killing these high elf mages and archers.
That was a surprise
like
for me. I was saying, like, maybe I don't play enough RPGs that it was weird that I played the Judges Week. They're like, it's weird that I'm like, oh, lizard men. Okay, I thought I was going to kill the lizards, but all right.
Right. Well, they kind of set it up.
Get out of my house. I kind of dug that.
In the cutscene, it was a little bit weird because they were talking a lot about the High Elves and their quest, and then all of a sudden I'm in the demo and it's like, no, you're the lizard men now. So that transition was a bit jarring, but it was a fun fight. So basically, you're just on a giant staircase, and you could play either easy or hard. I did easy first, and then I did a little bit of hard.
Ooh.
And...
Oh, that's something real quick about Agents of Mayhem that was really kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
They have like 10 levels of difficulty. The higher you ratchet it up, the more rewards you get.
Cool.
It's like Forza style.
Were they clearly labeled like, this is exactly what this level of difficulty does? Because
there's a lot of percentages on those screens.
Okay, cool. Because that would be a little overwhelming at first. Like, should I maybe tune it up a little bit? I don't know. But yeah, in the easy fight... just the whole demo really reminded me, like, oh man, when executed well, just the basic concept of Total War is still pretty good. Because, like I said, you're on this giant staircase, you're very locked in, you don't have a lot of room to maneuver, and you have all of these different groups of enemies, and those groups of enemies are stronger against some kind of units and weaker than others, but they're all kind of intermixed. And so you have to take your army and you have reinforcements coming in throughout the battle. And you just have to say, like, okay, I need to figure out where you need to go when, and then I need to, like, retreat to bring you closer. And because you're using these large forces, it's not like other sort of real-time strategy games where you can quickly adjust on the fly. It's not like, okay, I think I should do this, but then if I mess up, I'm going to be able to get out quickly or use some ability or something. It's like, no, you're controlling hundreds of things at once, and if you need to retreat, like, that's going to take some time, and so you really need to make sure that you're committing to them properly. And, like, your different attributes will change based on morale. So if you send a group in that is kind of in over their head, that morale is going to break. They're going to start to separate. They might even flee. And it was just fun managing all that stuff and kind of getting my bearing on things. And I felt really good. The easy battle was no problem, but then I jumped into hard. And before, there were kind of groups of enemies evenly spaced throughout this battlefield, and hard, it was just like, nope, here's a whole bunch. They're a lot more diverse. It's going to be a lot harder to take your limited amount of units and get through here. But it was fun. Yeah, like I said, during the battle itself, it was hard to get a sense of it being dramatically different from the first one, but I think that's okay. I think, like, the first one was well received enough that if the story is presented well and they have a lot of diversity in the missions, I think it could be cool. So yeah,
the fleeing was new to me in an RTS. Maybe I'm not that experienced in RTS, but that was fascinating. Where I would like tell a bunch of people, like, just go take those dudes out, and then I would like go back and be like, where'd they go? And like they were chasing the people, like taking off.
Right.
So it was tough to just like wait. No, okay, let them run. Now go do this.
Right. And at least in the demo, I thought the enemies were pretty smart because they would retreat, but then, so you'd think they wouldn't be a problem anymore, but they would get back just far enough to continually harass you.
Yeah.
And so you had to decide,
a lot of them were ranged, like archers, like elven archers.
Right. Is it smart for me to take my units that are engaged in like a bigger group and go after these stranglers, or should I just stay right here?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun. It was definitely very satisfying.
Elves had a big-ass dragon, too. So you had to like pay attention to when it landed and just bother to attack some stuff to like tell everybody to converge on it. Yeah, I normally get really frustrated in RTS levels. And I don't know if this is just Total War across the board, but like I love me some StarCraft. I love like Command and Conquer. I like building. So I like being responsible for what I have and what I'm bringing into a level. And I always get a little like nervous when I play a level. They're like, no, you just have this. Make it work.
I'm the opposite. I'm much better with you just telling me what I have and me working.
So you kind of know what difficulty.
Because it feels kind of like
according to you, I got enough.
Yeah,
but
whereas, once like you get to those later levels in a Fire Emblem game, it was like, okay, now I have tons of units. Pick who you're going to take in a battle. I'm like,
Yeah.
I want all of them.
We should have a versus stream, Blood. You versus me. We'll see who comes
you'll
out on
win.
top.
You'll win.
But
I would love a Total War stream with Blood and Brendan. Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, that just there are T-Rexes running around and just lots of different enemy types. And, and just love the environment too. I thought it was neat. Did you see the overworld at all? Did you see they had a trailer that showed a Judges Week where they went through.
Yeah.
Showed like it was interesting because it was like kind of a small version of the world, and they had big like Godzilla-sized versions of all the main characters that were just kind of like stomping around their like nations.
Definitely.
And looked neat. I just love seeing the world. I love seeing how everything ties together, how far things are from who's closest to this vortex. You can see that in the world too, like how it's affecting everything.
And this is just my own personal preference. Like I've enjoyed other Total War games, but for me, rather than having historical soldiers, I would much prefer just giant dinosaurs and dragons and beastmen and zooming in and watching them just breathe fire on everybody. Yeah, it's cool for me. What do you got, Brandon?
I got Days Gone.
Oh yeah,
Days Gone.
So
I'm
I
excited
did
about this.
I did talk some about this, but I'm curious to get your thoughts.
Days Gone. The major theme that I got that they were pitching at this demo was, if you go out and do this at different times, everything will change.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought would have been interesting that somebody just brought up after the demo, just like as an aside, was, would the bear be there if you hadn't made noise? And he said no. So at the end, when they're like, oh no, here comes this like crazy psycho bear, if he had stealthed through that whole area and not alerted them, and like in the demo that you saw during the Sony press conference, he went like to the right and found that big
swarm
of zombies, snuck through the fence, blew it up. They all come running in.
They're called freakers.
Freakers, excuse me.
Yeah, they
Wait.
are alive.
Freakers or freakos?
Freakers.
Okay, I think Huber was calling them freakos. Is that?
Yeah, they're called freakers.
Okay. All right. Blood laying down the law. I like it.
And then in this behind closed doors demo, you went around the left-hand side, and I think you mentioned the zombie that he shoots the chain and it attacks the guy. And so goes a totally different way, finds a sniper, or kills the guy with the sniper rifle, steals the sniper rifle, took out a couple guys that way, then goes in and shoots everybody, makes a lot of noise, and then that pisses off the bear. But if he hadn't done that, he'd be able to get him.
That's interesting because for the demo purposes, that bear was like a cutscene.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, if that is more of a how the open world is affected kind of a thing, or if that's just specific to maybe a couple of like story-specific cutscenes. And also because he was able to drive a little slower. The wolves weren't there because it was colder and it was snowing.
Yeah.
I believe he did the other demo at night, and this was during the day, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so he didn't hit that trap, so he was able to like see that in advance. I think like you could just see a couple guys walking across the street, like because they didn't hear you coming because it was like snowing and there was other stuff happening.
Oh yeah, they did kind of talk about like the snow would make you easier to stealth.
So he was able to sneak up on them. And one thing that I liked was I do like the context for Horizon Zero Dawn and the Arkham games, because Batman's such a awesome with tech and a great detective, that he's able to not only like kind of get a sense of what happened, but like completely recreate the entire scene from top to bottom. And I like that when you get a sense of you kind of get that detective vision in Days Gone a little bit. But you, like, for example, this guy crashed his bike that you're trying to rescue and was pulled away by people. I like that you just see, like, a second of him, like, getting pulled off the bike.
Yeah.
Because that, you would assume, like, that's kind of what I can picture, kind of what that would look like. Mm-hmm. And then you can see a little skid mark, and it's just like an arrow. It's not like I constantly have to be looking for footprints. Where are the footprints? It's just like that way. Like, you'll find it. It's
Sure.
not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that is indicative of how that stuff's going to go. I kind of, like, while I do like, following trails through, interesting areas in an open world, it would be kind of refreshing just to be like, we're not going to make you, be like a, Scooby-Doo, like sniffing the ground constantly to try to find it and just kind of give you a general direction. I'm excited about this game because, and this isn't necessarily specific to the demo, but I don't know how much I've talked about Days Gone. It seems like in a lot of open world games, even something like a State of Decay, you have a lot of people that you're like, these people may or may not be built for the apocalypse. Like there might be a struggle for some of them who aren't necessarily combat trained, who aren't necessarily survival trained, who don't travel that much, who are not used to like living on meager resources or maybe even where they would be. And like that's Walking Dead, and it's dramatic. Like to just like, what if you had children that had to deal with stuff, like Clementine does growing up. I like how refreshing it is in Days Gone, where it's like, this is a very capable person. Like, he's in a biker gang. He's used to traveling. He's not like, honey, let's get in a car and go on the freeway during the apocalypse. It's like, you're not going to go anywhere. And so it just, him having that motorcycle, having the attachment to it, being able to like upgrade that throughout the game, kind of having the attachment like that Max does in the Mad Max game, which like I didn't think that story was exceptional. I didn't think a lot of the activities that you did when you got to locations didn't blow me away, but I just loved that game and I loved traveling throughout the world, and I loved how I felt as somebody who was more capable to deal with this environment than a lot of the people around me.
Yeah.
And so from a character perspective, I'm interested in checking that out. But I did had some couple issues. But you had a question, Ben?
Yeah, the question that I had, and it's hard to get a sense with what we've seen so far, but just what we saw in the gameplay demo where he used the bomb to blow up the door and all those freakers came out, and just you mentioning how things change at different times of day, I hope that in the game that resources are limited enough where you are really incentivized to explore, because I hope it's not like, hey, we have all of these cool things in this game, you can do these combat encounters a bunch of different ways, but you have so much ammo and you're so capable at shooting. Like you said, this is a capable person who's not going to go into battle unprepared. I just hope that comes across the final thing.
In the demo, he saw the motorcycle crash and then immediately went into the woods. And then behind the scenes, he like went up to the ambulance, took out his knife, popped that open, grabbed a couple things out of the ambulance, like when it got something out of the front seat, looted every corpse he came across. So, like, there's definitely more of a sense of like, this is kind of, you're going to be scrounging a lot. Sure. You never want to. And just grabbing that sniper was really gratifying because he came in, scanned ahead, marked. You have to actually physically mark. So it's not just like hover it over a dude for 2 seconds and then boop, it'll just automatically happen. Like you got to hit the trigger to like you.
Sure.
And so, I like that he specifically was like, I'm going to take out that sniper first because I don't have a sniper rifle, and then just kind of sneak in where they can't see me, grab it, sneak back out, and then just clear the camp.
I mean, one of the things, so somebody was just asking is like why they don't call them zombies, but I think the thing is that they're not just picking a different name, even though Freakers is a stupid name, but...
you heard it here first.
But they are emphasizing the fact that these are more like feral, living creatures that they have needs for hunger and thirst, and so you can find them by streams when they're the right time of day when they're needing water. You can find them maybe going after a deer or something when they're hungry. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of mechanic plays into things.
Yeah. Two things that I didn't love. A little bit nervous, not so nervous that I'm not going to play the heck out of this game and arm wrestle all of you to review it. The sound wasn't like fantastic. He got a machine gun and he was taking out some dudes in the camp. It just didn't. I wasn't feeling it. Like I don't know if it was where I was standing in the room or maybe the surround sound was set up weird.
How was the sound of the zombies? Because when I think about The Last of Us, I think about going into a room and not hearing the clicker, like not seeing the clickers, but hearing them and how impactful that was.
The only one he came across was the one that was chained up. Because again, he took a different way.
Sure.
So he went around and
and then the ones that were hanging, but they were hanging.
The AI was pretty good based on like recognition of what was happening. So like even though he was sniping people, a couple guys freaked out. Like once one guy definitely saw and was yelling to the other people and alerting them.
The one thing that bugged me though is that point where with the bear trap where he gets the guy in the trap. Like everyone just sort of runs by.
Oh, and he killed all of them too.
But I mean,
he goes by in the demo and in our thing he just Molotov lights them all on fire.
But everyone just like kind of runs right next to him without noticing. And I'm like, you're visible,
and he's right there. Yeah, little bit of classic Splinter Cell where you're just like standing right next to somebody. Like I'm not here because I'm kind of slightly in shadow. The other thing too, and this is again, I was spoiled because this is immediately following my demo of Spider-Man, and so I'm just watching just this absolute buttery gameplay, just the smoothness of all the transitions between coming in and out of cutscenes and dodging things and all of the combat moves. There was not that fluidity between a lot of the melee attacks specifically, like when he would like pull weapons out, switch weapons, pick stuff up. I'm attacking an enemy, now I'm just moving around and attacking this person behind me. A little bit of jank there. But I don't know if that's just, because they were like really slaving, like to get a demo together for E3. It's an open world game too, so I'm always like, I'll give them a little bit of leeway. But that was something that I was like, I don't know about this game, but I'm like, I'm really excited about this game, and like that's just like I wish when he grabbed an axe and hit somebody, it like really felt responsive. from what I can see, and specifically that gun, like when he actually just, okay, everyone's discovered me, time to unload. It wasn't like that. Oh, this is just fantastic. That because again, like I'm gonna stealth in that game as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like, okay, I'll break out a shotgun and just go to town, and just didn't have the oomph I was looking for.
I just want to try to command the largest horde of freakers that I can. I think in every situation, that's what I'm going to be trying to do.
That was one thing. I didn't answer the question because I'm like, based on what they're saying, I think you can do that. But like, one thing I would be tempted to do, even in that one situation, would be when with the guy in the chain, you shoot the chain, freaker kills that guy, and just go running, piss off the freaker, have him chase you, and maybe see if you could like the freaker knows I'm here, but they don't.
Right.
So like the freaker's gonna try to get to me in a bush, and maybe like the one of them will start shooting him, and so he just goes through the camp and like
exactly.
And a lot of the questions that were brought up were like, okay, this looks great. I get weapons, I get the bike especially, but like, how does this open world work? And they were like, well, we'll get to that. Spider-Man kind of said the same thing. It's like, we'll get to that later, more details. But from the way that they sold it, I wasn't even 100% sure that it was an open world. Because the missions that we've seen so far have been, kind of linear, and they definitely emphasized like, yeah, you are on a mission. If you were to like go into that little encampment and see that NPC standing there by the gate with a little exclamation point over his head, and you go up and talk to him, it cues up that cutscene of you like, I'm leaving town, and he's like, wait, you're gonna want to go save your friend. But he starts out and goes to the left, and there's no mini map in the HUD, and that was intentional for E3 to kind of more show off the world more.
Yeah, but, they did have it in our demo.
What they didn't do is he's like, you could also bring up the map itself and see, because the guy's like, how did you know where to go? And he's like, I know you're the developer, but if I was playing, it's like, oh, it's in the map, but we didn't get into that in the demo. But if you want, after that mission, just like GTA, you can just take off. Sure. You can like go wherever you want. It's not a good way to finish that mission, but if the game feels a little restrictive to you, it's They said especially it is very much not. It's a completely wide, crazy open world.
Cool.
And I cannot wait to run around. Days gone.
Nice. Yeah, my next one. Ben, you're in with me for the presentation. Project Cars 2.
Yeah, and it was a heck of a presentation.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot.
As Slightly Mad tends to do. They were basically making it sound like everyone else in the industry is trying to catch up to them.
Yeah.
Can I just really quick? Can I just sell this? Can I just sell this at Judges Week because it was so funny? So this was a Bandai Namco event, and I got to play Ni no Kuni 2 and Ace Combat 7 and Project Cars 2 all at the same event. Ace Combat 7 comes up. Hey, it's exciting. VR. We want you to check out VR. You got a demo. You're going to be flying around. It's going to be great. Ni no Kuni comes up like, hey, we've got a couple boss fights. There's story-specific stuff. Get any questions, come on and answer me. Project Cars 2 goes up, 20 minutes. It's just like, whoa! Like, so many slides, so many things. Like, all the games they've developed, everything they learned from the last game they're putting into this game, everything you're going to be playing. The demo was just way more content than I could have possibly played in an hour. Like, overkill. But like, I love overkill at E3. It's the best.
And like, for all of those points, almost every single one who's saying, yep, the other guys aren't doing that. And just taking so much pride in it. There was like some scrappiness there that I was kind of into.
But they were like, it's like, yeah, it's cool that they're doing 4K, but we're doing 12K. And like, they're using consoles, guys. Like, yeah, you can get some gigantic, crazy rig together.
And I think he said maybe they'll catch up to us in a few years or something. Yeah. So, all right.
But the funny thing about that, though, is like, Forza has done the 3-screen thing before. I mean, it required 3 Xboxes, but they may have a means of doing that. But they did talk about having the dynamic weather, where the same thing where the ground gets saturated and the puddles build, which is very similar to what Forza demonstrated. But the thing that was crazy to me is they talked about doing dynamic based on seasons. So they are actually calculating where the sun is going to be in the sky and the time of day and all of that, no matter what date it is on the calendar. And then why that's significant is based on where the sun's shining and where the shadows are, the track is going to be hotter or cooler there, and your grip is going to change ever so subtly. And so if you're paying attention to that stuff, it can make a bit of a difference. They also talked about localized weather, which some of the F1 games have done in the past, where some of the bigger tracks, it might be raining on one part of the track and not another part of the track. And then...
and change, that rain might move through the track.
Oh, yeah. And then being able to form a drying line after the rain, which again, F1's done that for a bit of time, but not a lot of other racers have done that. They talked about having drones that flew over the track,
dude,
and just took hundreds of thousands of photos of each track so they could get the trackside details
like from
right.
both angles. They do a drive-through with the car, so they have a camera on the car, so that's capturing what it looks like from the driver's perspective, and then just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just scanning, the ground like the bottom of the seafloor. I love it. Detail.
They talked a little bit about having like online championships and matchmaking based on how you play over time, so that griefers will basically just get matched with griefers.
They're called Freakers Blood.
They went really hard on the esports stuff. As well.
Yeah, they did. Most successful esport racer, they actually said. But they're going to have a broadcaster tool so that somebody could actually like set up exactly which racers they're going to follow and do all the commentary and stuff like that. Let's see. They emphasized being able to play any car right from the start so that you don't have to grind to unlock cars.
And he was like, our game doesn't do that grinding thing. Again, just kind of like separating himself from the competition.
They talked about a secondary career path that you can get into where you have a driver affinity with certain manufacturers, and you get into that. They talked about improving the tire simulation. They talked. Probably one of the biggest things is they improved the gamepad handling, which I did get to play a couple of races afterwards, and I can tell for sure that like it plays better with a controller now than it did before. It was like there were options in there to where you could dial it in, but it was all very. You had to go into those like nitty gritties of like setting up all your controller sensitivities and stuff for it to really match what you were kind of wanting. So like out of the box, playing with the controller is better. They talked about, I love this. They talked about if you go off road and get into the dirt, then you're going to drag that dirt onto the track.
Oh, cool.
And it's going to affect that part of the track for other drivers. So I love it.
Did either of you do VR?
No, they didn't have VR there in the booth, which kind of makes. They did have a bunch of stuff out in the front of the booth, the cockpit thing. So maybe there was some VR there.
Oh, okay.
But in the back area where we were, they just had normal.
Got the joy of watching Jeff Keighley with the headset on in like the
How do you do?
Drive back and forth. Casual.
Okay. All right.
Kidding. No, it's great.
One of the things that I thought was cool is they just said with the first project cars, because they were new, they hadn't proven themselves yet. It was harder for them to get big name license deals, that's something that they were able to greatly expand. They were able to go to those same license holders and be like, hey, we have a successful thing, and negotiate a lot more deals. So that's gonna be nice, because I know that was a big complaint in the first game, that there just weren't some names that people wanted.
Yeah, so. And I did two races. One was with a McLaren out on more of a road style course, which I don't feel like they had that many of in the first project cars, which I really liked. There were a lot of elevation changes. There were points where I had taken a bit too fast over a bump, and it was like, I'm just kind of got my wheels off the ground there.
Having played this in VR, that was the most fascinating thing to me, and I think I've said this before, but the elevation changes.
Yeah.
They're like when the car physically moves down and moves up. Like in a video game, we're used to like them just automatically moving our perspective to see it. And in VR, it's like, no, you gotta kind of duck or like raise your head to see over the front of your car if it's like going up. It's interesting.
And then I did a track race as well, which actually I think I got some kind of weird bug on my second race.
Ooh. Because
I was in the cockpit view. It was I understand that like the sunlight is going to come in at certain times and it's going to be kind of blown out, but it had gotten so white and blown out that I actually couldn't see anything. It was just white in front of me, and then I switched out to third person. It's like, oh, okay, now I can see it. But it was still, even there, it was like a little grayed out. So, still some tweaks to come before it comes out on September 22nd.
No other racing game does that.
But yeah, that's they bragged about, like they claim to have more tracks than anybody else, more real world tracks.
Like, despite what anyone else says, we have the most tracks. Right. Like, you may hear other things, but
I played them and they're lying.
Yeah. My last one. I'm on my last game for today.
Really?
Yeah, there's another one that I can talk about in a couple of days.
You stick around?
I'll stick around. I want to be here as long as possible. Spreading the word. Rating Historia, Perfect Chronology. Again, this was frustrating, just like Etrian Odyssey. It was like I got to play it for 5 minutes. I think I did a total of 3 battles.
So you didn't get to play that Vanillaware game, huh?
No, that wasn't playable at the show. It was just they just had a new trailer.
Okay.
Yeah, believe me. I wanted to. But yeah, it's been a long time, I realized, since I had played Rating Historia. And just being thrown into the battles again. You were talking about battle chasers, where it was like, oh, I can't just attack my way through this. I have to think about what I'm doing. That was very much present in the Radiant Historia demo that I played, because you have enemies on a grid, and you need to think about like how your attacks will push them back and their positions, what they can do from the positions that they're in, and I was a little overwhelmed at first, and like one attack from one enemy, it's like, oh, I'm at like 40% health all of a sudden. And that happened a lot. It was pretty taxing immediately, and so that was cool. It was like, oh, okay, right, this game has an interesting battle system where you have to put quite a lot of thought into it. And just immediately, so they're doing new visuals for this sort of Perfect Chronology edition of Radiant Historia, and it looks really, really good. The sprites are so clean, very sharp. Like them a lot. There's voice acting now.
Oh, wow.
And there's a new sort of sub-story that'll have a new party member in it, who I did not see in the demo itself. Her name is Nemesia, but it reminded me that when Atlas goes out of their way they've done this a couple of times where they brought DS games to the 3DS. The one that immediately jumps to mind is Devil Survivor, and I played like Devil Survivor Overclocked, and then they did Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker, and I thought those were pretty good upgrades. The extra day that they added into Devil Survivor was super substantial. The voice acting was great. Like, they put a lot of love and care to these things. They're not just simple ports, which is really cool. And so because of that past experience, I feel pretty confident in Perfect Chronology, and the tiny little bit that I did get to play supported that confidence. Another thing that they're doing, there's also 5 new tracks that are going to play, and that game has great music, so
nice.
Thumbs up.
Yeah. That sounds like only positives. For going back and playing a game again. So it sounds like they're not, you're like, I love hearing Damiani complain about like Zelda weird tiny like gameplay f-ups that they do and like remakes and stuff. Was there's no little tweaks like there where they're like, oh, let's improve this, and you're like, that didn't need to be improved?
It's hard to tell because in those 3 battles, I would say the first 2 battles, I just had to remember how to play it.
Right.
And so it's hard being like, oh, okay, they need to tweak this because I didn't even understand it immediately.
Right.
And then by the time I was just getting the hang of things, I was pulled off. And outside of those 3 battles, I really didn't get to explore a lot. I didn't get to see any of the story stuff.
Yeah.
I can't even critique the new voicing that isn't in there. I can't critique the tracks that are in there. I can't critique the new party member or the new sub-story that's in there. And so it's hard. I definitely wish I had more substantial things to say, but I just didn't get to see enough to doubt it. It's just, they've done like this exact thing with different games, and I've played those, and I thought in those games, all of those additions were substantial. They were well done. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very exciting. I definitely have a lot of the little tiny like games like that, so in case both of you run out and I have some more to do, I can get through them really fast.
Boom.
But I want to pick some of the big stuff. Yes. This might not seem big, but I don't believe anybody else checked it out. I did the Bethesda VR threesome.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And I liked some of it, and I did not like others.
Okay.
Fallout is the oldest of this, so I'll get that out of the way.
Wait, actually,
yes.
I'm wrong. There's another game that I have.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Nice.
That I did get to play for a while, so
Sweet.
I have
Sweet.
way more to say about that. It's a big one. How did I forget it?
Fallout was very smooth and awesome. I think Fallout maybe didn't look as good as the others, and I don't know if that's just Fallout. I did not play
That might
Fallout.
just be Fallout.
Okay.
Yeah.
I played all of these. I played Skyrim on the PSVR, but I played Doom and Fallout on the Vive. And Doom definitely looked way better than Fallout did. But Fallout was just really easy. I got nervous because I didn't know the Bethesda appointment was VR, and it was my first appointment of the day, and I was like, oh no, okay. And I'm in this like fishbowl, and all these people who are waiting a long time in line are looking at me, the judge, like sneaking past them, like, sorry. And so I'm jumping into this world. I only have a couple minutes to like go through. Hadn't played Fallout, and in Doom and in Skyrim, you're teleporting. In Fallout, you're walking around, and I was like, oh no, that's the worst. When you're just like, your body's like, this isn't me walking around, this is weird. Was totally comfortable. The speed was great. They gave me power armor right away, so I'm just like going through. Like there were enemies like clawing at me, and I didn't even realize it. And I would just turn around like, oh.
Did you VATS?
I did VATS.
Okay. Yeah,
And-
we were wondering if VATS was actually in there because they didn't show it.
And I could see parts of bodies like highlighting. There was not like a lot of stat representation of like, here's how much damage you're going to do, or here's the odds of you hitting it, or here's how effective that shot was. It was just fun to do slow-mo in a first-person VR game. You know, it's just like, okay, for this moment, I'm going to slow things down. Was a little tricky because you just got to learn. I only had 5 minutes in there, and you got to learn all the buttons. So by the time I like finally got in, I just was in power armor, just walked right in the middle of that first town, and just like spun around in a circle and took everybody out. So Fallout was good. Old. I don't know how exciting it is for our viewers to hear about that demo because I know that was at last year's E3.
Sure.
Doom's not. I like Doom.
No.
The reason I didn't
we
like
kind of had that sense.
Yeah,
like Doom
we
is
did.
such a fast-paced game.
the reason I didn't like Doom was two main things. One, I had a gun bigger than like my leg, like in my hand, and it had no weight to it because it'll move as fast. Everything in the environment's gonna move as fast as like, you know, I can move it in real life. So it just felt weird to be like with this gigantic, huge metal thing, and like this the sound was great. Like again, it's tough to play something just for 5 minutes. So like the headphones were like perfect on my head, and so I'm just like, I'd really like to crank this up and like get, you know, really loud into the world. And it was a kind of thing where like you could press forward if you want, or you could hold the button down to teleport, and it didn't like the reaction with being like, no, I always want to teleport. I always want to just be like right there, and like
I feel like then the whole thing is broken. Like Doom, you just need every movement to function exactly when you want it to.
And like one thing that I like that Google VR does, which is probably the most time I've ever spent in a VR game, is that when I'm pressing forward, I'm going in that direction. So if I'm aiming at people coming at me, I want to go like that. I want to be able to just be like behind my back, like go back. Right. But I don't want to take my perspective away from this, and I don't want to take this arm away from constantly shooting at these guys and try to move back. And there were moments in Doom where I'm like, teleport over there. Do it. Come on. You know, just like, whereas Skyrim, click, no problem.
Okay.
Like any direction.
So that is something that they could possibly improve in Doom then.
You mentioned that the movement has changed for you.
Right.
Do the enemies, how they move, change as well?
Compared to Fallout, where I would like go up to a building and look through a window and see like, oh, okay, there's a, you know, monster in there. So I'm gonna like chuck a grenade in or like get in there and, you know, shoot. I can see it in advance. Everything's teleporting. So like they're a huge guy. Like I teleported one time and saw like a belt and I'm just like, what? Whoa. And I had to like, you know, manually move back to be like, oh, this giant thing popped in front of me. And so at the same time, like while it was scary to see these fireballs flying at you, and the environment looked gorgeous. I mean, Doom's a beautiful, beautiful game, and it looked great in VR. But it was a weird experience. Like, and it might have been something where like I just didn't get in the groove. I only could play it for 5 minutes. I told them specifically, out of these 3 games, I'm most excited about Skyrim. So if I only have 20 minutes here, I want to do 10 with Skyrim and 5 with the other 2. Just felt a little messy. It again, beautiful. Like you see, like the gun I had was the I don't know the name of it, but the energy gun, the blue, like the
plasma,
like a machine gun with a plasma.
The plasma gun.
That was the gun I had. I enjoyed shooting things with it.
Yeah, it makes a good sound.
I wouldn't say it was because even though the frustrations that I had, it wasn't difficult. I was able to kick some ass, but
man, again, like
it, yeah. And it was one of those things too where like in Skyrim, and maybe this is the fact that I've played way more of Skyrim than I have of Doom, but there was a lot of like, okay, you know, he had to like kind of nudge me and be like, to use that, to flip that switch, do this and hit this button. Whereas Skyrim, maybe it was also the PSVR, I don't know, like I was more used to those controllers, but I was able to just jump into Skyrim, which I will talk about last, and have a really good time.
See, for me, when I think about Fallout, when I think about Skyrim, it's immediately obvious what the VR adds, where it's like, okay, this is a world where it's all about exploration, it's all about finding things, and that, like, just being able to look around freely with the headset, that makes so much sense for that type of experience. But to me, Doom is about throwing as much nastiness at you as possible, but giving you the tools to respond to it, like, and this just seems not that. It seems like it's really taking away some of those defining elements that you would expect out of Doom.
But I will counter with Skyrim, which was very fun.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people are groaning at the prospect of playing Skyrim again. I do not think Skyrim in VR is going to make me put 80 more hours into this video game. But the thing that was fascinating was if I am playing a third-person RPG, I will most likely want to play a paladin or warrior or barbarian, somebody that can run in, mess some stuff up. I love being a tank. When I am playing a first-person fantasy game, I will almost always be a ranger. And so going into this, I was like, oh, I'm really curious to see how the bow and arrow goes, because I played a couple of Vive games. There's a couple bow and arrow Vive games that I dug. And I don't know if I can do this for 3 straight hours, just again and again, especially because it was tough to get the aim. So there was just one guy that was like hiding behind a pole that I'm just like, oh my god, come on! I shot like 20 times.
Yeah.
And they started me out as a mage, and they started out where I had fireball in one hand and lightning in the other, and I was like, wait, and immediately switched it over to a bow to try that, and I was like, let me go back to the fire thing, and I switched it back to where like I can just see my hand and it's fire, and you just go. Just like a flamethrower, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm gonna do this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna level this up, and I'm rarely a mage in RPGs.
Yeah, you're always an archer.
And the other thing that excited me about being a mage, other than like putting up both hands and having lightning blasting out of one, fire blasting out of the other, like the spider boss, Ben, when you get through in the area, there's like that one dungeon where he's up in the little thing.
They're all over the place, Brandon.
I was like, oh no, VR, I'm gonna have the spider come at me, and I just was like. Dead. I'm like, all right, this could be. I think I might enjoy this. But you could teleport in Skyrim, and the one thing that was weird that I did ask him, I'm like, can I extend that? Because it went like 2 feet in front of me. I'm like, can I? I'd like to. I want to go up there. Like I just know I want to be there. And he's like, yeah, we're still messing with that. You might be able to change that either manually in game or in the settings. We're still like adjusting like specifically how that's going to go. So like going through the dungeons was just kind of like 2 feet at a time, which was like a little disingenuous to like the good old Skyrim experience that I remember of just like really taking the environment in slowly. Like I played Skyrim so many times. I was like, oh, this dungeon. Like I knew exactly where I was on the map, like what I was going into. What surprised me most is that the ability to navigate the world in that way and travel by teleporting to areas turned me into Nightcrawler basically in Skyrim. So if I have one hand that's moving the teleporter and another hand that's shooting out these fireballs, you're not going to hit me. It's not going to happen. Like I can see you winding up the attack and just like bye, and then back to where I was standing, throw a spell, like go back, and that was an interesting way to kind of cheat through Skyrim. I was like, I wonder if that'll really mess up some areas of the game where they set up things that are supposed to be difficult, and it's like it's not difficult because if that dragon's rearing up and is about to do this big lightning attack, just point over there and hit a button.
What VR headset did you play Skyrim on?
PSVR.
Okay, because when we were watching it in the press conference, we were like, oh man, that looks like a pretty substantial downgrade. How did it look in the headset itself?
Not fantastic. It was not like Skyrim Reborn. Like I'm sure it's the remastered version of that. But that was not. Which is why I want to put the emphasis on Doom. Out of the 3 of them, Doom was clearly the prettiest. Okay. Like just terminals, just the environment, the reflections, the lighting. Like,
but you don't want to play it.
But I'm not interested. I think if they really want to convince Doom players to check that out, I would build a different kind of experience. Whereas I think a Fallout, a Skyrim. Works more for just being like it's that game in VR. It's that simple, Like obviously how it controls is different, but you're gonna want to get in there and experience that whole game. Whereas like there are parts of Doom that like I'd rather it kind of have a Gears of War feel where I'm kind of like like hunkering down in this one area defending myself as opposed to like I'm just rolling through these hallways because something might port behind me and I don't I didn't see it, but that's Bethesda VR.
You mentioned that shooting the bow and arrow got pretty tedious after a time.
Just tiring.
Yeah, and I can imagine.
Kind of like baseball on the Wii. It's just like, I don't know.
Right, and with the fire, just holding it down, so that's a lot simpler. But did you do a lot of sword swinging as well?
Did not touch the sword and shield at all. Because that's
curious how that felt.
Curious too, but just didn't seem like I would like it, even if it did well. Again, for the same reasons.
It seemed like you sort of settled on teleporting magic. You're like, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good
this
for
is
this
it.
whole demo.
I locked it, and if it ain't broke.
Sure.
Yeah, but what's interesting, though, is a lot of that, I feel, is going to translate directly to those motion controls on the Switch version.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, where I'm guessing that that's going to be an optional thing.
Between what I've seen on the Switch and Skyrim on the go sounds really fascinating. If something's going to get me to replay Skyrim in 2017, it'll be VR, not the Switch. But I'll probably still buy it on the Switch.
Nice.
As well, because it's Skyrim. Can't stop buying Skyrim. There you go. What you got, Blade?
I think I've bought Skyrim 3 different times. It's a lot. It's a lot of times. Part of the problem. I can't believe I forgot this.
Wait.
It's blood. It's blood. I'm sorry. I was just excited because.
Sure.
I can't believe you forgot it was Blood's turn.
Boop.
The next one, I'm gonna say like, this is one where I feel like I have to reserve judgment a bit.
Oop.
Skull and Bones. This game is a lot to absorb in a demo.
Okay.
Yep.
Here we go.
It is. At the base level, it is the same ship combat that you had in Assassin's Creed 4. A lot of it's going to be familiar in terms of, where your weapons are going to be firing from and that kind of
The
thing.
HUD looked very similar to me.
Yeah, some of the HUD, but it is way more complex, and it's multiplayer ship battles, and essentially what you have to do. The way they ran the demo is we did like a little tutorial, and then we did 2 matches, and it was 5-on-5. And so essentially what you have to do is try to take out these merchant ships, collect as much loot as you can, and then after a while, once you've gathered the loot, then you need to get out of there. But at the same time, the enemy team can come in and take you down, and then once you sink, then your loot is available for them to pick up, and it can kind of become this kind of back and forth. But it was so much more complicated because I don't know if you remember when they first introduced the ship battles in 3, they had a lot of stuff going on with wind direction that they kind of pulled back on in 4.
I don't remember that. No, interesting.
Yeah. So they brought that back, and so
Okay.
now there's like all of these like crazy complicated wind maps going around the islands and stuff like that. And another thing that they changed is there's a health bar for each side of your ship.
Okay.
So the broadsides, like one side can be taking a lot of damage, but then if you flip around, like you can sustain more. They had 3 different classes of ships. So they really, encourage your team to sort of be sure to mix it up, not be homogenous. And so you have these big frigates, which are, essentially your tanks. You had brigandines, which are the short-range bruisers that were good for getting in there, for ramming ships especially. And then you had the marksman, which is sort of like your long-range sniper kind of ship. But I found it really difficult. Oh, another thing that they changed is they changed how raising your sails works, and I think that was one of the most confusing things for me. I couldn't entirely understand when I was raising the sails or lowering the sails. It was just this weird meter on the left of the map, and so that was a little bit confusing for me. And it never, as far as I could tell, it never did that full. You remember in Black Flag, when you went to full sails, it kind of did that zoom out so you could get a good look around you. It doesn't seem like it does that. So it makes it a little bit harder.
Maybe you're just always that far back, or?
No, you were just always on the ship, with the sails right in front of you.
Oh, okay.
So it just
when you're moving them, or when?
No, just pretty much at all times. The only time that you saw past the sails essentially was when you were aiming forward and that kind of thing.
Interesting.
So yeah, it did make it a bit trickier to sort of navigate.
Yeah.
And then it was just, it was just sort of felt like there was just really hard for us to coordinate our team, and it's okay, I'm going for this over here because nobody else is over that way. But then it's I don't know. It was an overwhelming amount of stuff happening. So I feel like you'd really have to get in there and get some matches down before you really get a full feel for it all.
But it kind of makes sense. I mean, you're a team that's worked on this thing that was added to a popular franchise that not only are you super excited about and clearly demonstrating you're capable of making that into its own game. You have a big publisher like Ubisoft that's we're going to end our press conference with this is going to be a major initiative for this company.
Right.
Wouldn't you want to just throw the kitchen sink at it and just be what are we missing? What possible thing we can add? That sounds like a tricky thing to demo at something like E3. For you to just take that all in. Do you maybe think it would have been better to maybe not put every single gameplay element in there and just kind of let you understand the basics? Or was it kind of fun in an intimidating way, kind of similar to the RPGs you only had 5 minutes to play, where you're just okay, there's a lot going on here,
right?
And that's not necessarily a bad thing,
right? Yeah. Well, it was kind of crazy too, because the tables turn so quickly, because once you get so much loot on your ship, then it kind of alerts everybody to that. They literally put a big target over your head.
Nice.
And so it's that's a high value target. You need to go for that guy. And then of course, the whole other team is coming after you. Mm-hmm. And I tried. I was trying to take down a guy before he escaped, and and I was doing okay, but yeah, the rest of his team came up to guard him and just shredded me.
I guess
me out.
For me, whether I was getting attacked or attacking, you have a game where it is hard to coordinate, it is hard to move around. When you finally get there and you finally land that big shot, is what you're seeing visually like a pretty good reward? Like, is the ship like clearly and is it bombastic, I guess? Like, is the ship realistically blowing apart? Is it cool watching it sink? Like, how dramatic are those moments?
No, I'd say that is something that is kind of lacking.
Okay, that's a big thing. I think.
I did have a bit of a hard time like figuring out like am I really, without looking at meters, am I really doing damage to this ship or not? And I think I had a hard time really reading. And I think that's why I felt so overwhelmed. It's because there's a lot of things in that game where I had a hard time identifying like whether I was really being effective with what I was trying to do, and then sort of trying to compensate from that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it's hard to fully judge from a couple of matches, but from where I was at, it felt difficult to get into.
My game, which I am like very sad that I forgot about, one that I was super excited to check out at the show, is Ys 8. And Ys is I have two really big JRPG piles of shames, and one is Ys and two is Suikoden, both of which I've like dabbled with several times. You ever have those games where you play a little bit and then something pulls you away, and then a couple of years later you fall into the exact same situation where you play a little bit and then something else pulls you away? That has happened to me multiple times with E. I've played several of them for not a significant amount of time at all, and the same with Suikoden. And so I was excited to check out Ys 8, the first on PlayStation 4, and like built primary platform on PS4, so that was interesting. And I basically was in what was essentially a dungeon. It was this forest area. And the first point that I want to get across is how responsive it felt, and how I always think it's a good sign in a JRPG or an action RPG or any RPG really, is how quickly you can understand things, how quickly you can understand the systems, and not having to go to a menu and read it, but just based on the visual information that they're presenting you can just figure it out. And that was all present here. You can switch with characters with Square, and that happened immediately. You have a 3-person party. We were talking about that before. And the enemies that you're fighting, when you go up to them, it'll say like, hey, here's an icon. It's weak to this. Each of your 3 different party members, it's clear what types of damage that you're doing. And so you have somebody that does piercing damage. You have somebody that does like bashing damage, basically. And then you have the main protagonist who does slashing damage. You can see like, okay, this enemy, we have a mixed group of enemies, so I'm going to take out the guy that's weak to bashing first, and then switch to my other character and then attack. And all of this, there's no, like, I didn't feel like I ever had to retreat from a battle in order to make these changes. I could do all of them on the fly very immediately, and that felt good. Another thing that felt good is it has sort of this perfect dodge mechanic, which I was told from the person presenting the demo was introduced in Ys on Vita, Memories of Celceta. And basically what happens is if you dodge at just the right moment, you'll get a sort of, we've used this a lot, but it's a good example, is Witch Time, where things will slow down and you'll be able to get a bunch of free hits in.
Okay.
And so that was a lot of fun. The window there felt just right, where I didn't feel like I could spam dodge and get this effect, but it didn't feel so strict that I was constantly having problems doing it. I felt like, all right, as long as I'm like being careful and thinking about it, I can generally find that timing, and that felt really good. Yeah, that led to a boss fight, which was really fun, because it was this giant turtle that had a bunch of like purple spots on its back, and it would shoot all of these. The spots would shoot these big purple orbs, and you were just dodging around them, weaving in between, and then finding hits when you could, and basically taking him into a down state where you get a bunch of good damage. And so really what I got to experience in that amount of time is the combat especially, and I got a small sense of exploration. I think there were 2 things that I was disappointed by with Ys 8. The first being that, and I don't know if it was just the demo, but the areas that I was in felt pretty restrained. There wasn't Like, you could kind of go off a fork a little bit and find a chest, but there wasn't anything super dramatic. It wasn't like, oh, wait, is there something up there? And, like, really having to put a lot of thought in. And a lot of it was just, like, kind of small circular areas or pretty confined, straightforward paths.
Did the area feel kind of exclusive to something that would accommodate an E3 demo, or did you feel like this was indicative of the game?
It felt like a vertical slice, but I couldn't get a good sense of where we were in the story. And so maybe it's just the beginning of the game. Like, the enemies were all pretty simple and straightforward. So maybe it's just like, hey, this is just the first area to get your feet wet. But it was hard to gauge from the demo. So maybe that is a problem that will correct itself. The other thing that I was disappointed on is just, it really didn't look technically impressive. The models for both the characters and the enemies were... not crude, I would say that's not the word I would use, but they looked like something out of a previous generation game or even like a Vita game, and I think that might be the source of the problem, is this is also coming out on Vita, and you can definitely tell.
Yeah.
And so that was a little bit disappointing. I will say that, like, while it wasn't technically impressive, the forest itself was really bright and colorful, and it had a good atmosphere to it, but yeah, it was not a strong looker, I would say.
Shucks.
But it was fun, and it was fast, it was snappy. I guess one other criticism is, like, for my first time playing this game, and maybe, again, it was just an E3 demo, I just ran through everything. Like, I was making the effort to do these like perfect guards essentially, and making an effort to try out a bunch of different skills, but I could have just mashed the attack button and gotten through. And again, that could totally just be an E3 demo, but that was my experience.
And this is like the new installment in the Ys franchise.
Yes, this is the next mainline. This is the next mainline
Nice.
Ys game. So, yeah.
I would like to talk about Starlink.
Oh yeah.
This is the...
Starlink.
Did you build a ship?
Well, it was built for me. I took it apart and put it back together, but yeah.
Was it huge?
No, it's not huge. It's very light.
Okay.
They made it good. Well, it's about that big.
Okay.
Like wing to wing, it was like about
I
size
have
of a
this
cheeseburger.
image, Brendan, in my head where you're sitting somewhere, behind some closed door, and you just have this giant ship, and you just
Well,
have
it's
this big dumb
attached to the
smile on your
controller,
face.
which I didn't
Yeah,
know.
Wow.
It sits on top of the controller.
Crazy.
So you're, playing when you got this spaceship on top. They had 4 different spaceships. One was, quicker, more nimble. Its weapons fired faster. One had a lot more defense, had like a shield. One runs out of energy slower. So if you have like your big powerful attacks that you can do, those are like ingrained into the ship. They also have pilots. So if you take the ship off, you got your little pilot actually like on the bottom, and you can like put pilots in different ships.
Wow.
And they have their own specific ability, and they have their own.
So they have like little ships or what? How do they do all that?
It's just attached to the controller and plugs in, and it will do the same on Switch. They have like a little Switch thing that'll like attach to your Switch, so you can take the game around portable.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, and it's a fascinating game. There's a lot of cool tech behind this. I don't know if this is a game I'm going to put a lot of time into, but they're doing so many unique things, and it's an exciting game to like explain how it works. So you have this little doohickey that you clip your little pilot on, and then you snap the ship onto that. And in mid gameplay, I think it'll pause if you take the ship off, but it will not pause if you take a wing off. So if you're like, wait a minute, I got to change my guns, you just like take that off and put another thing on.
When you have this thing on your controller, like, where is it at exactly, and do you feel like it's making it more difficult to push buttons?
No, there is a stand in the middle of the controller that goes straight up, and then it sits on top of that, so your hands are on both sides of this like wall in the middle between your hands. Okay. So you imagine resting like right over the middle of the
But it did not feel
PlayStation
uncomfortable.
Controller. No.
Okay.
Yeah, it never got in my way. It was not heavy. They definitely said like we try to make these things as light as possible.
Sure.
And one thing for anybody that's out there, it's like, I mean, those things are cool, and Toys to Life is cool, but like every time I don't want to do it. The second you put something on that has not been on before, it downloads it digitally, and you never have to do anything with toys ever again if you don't want. So as long as you like get the thing and the game recognizes that you have it and you put it on, it'll upload to your system, and then like if you want to take the Switch on the go, you can change parts digitally, you can change pilots and stuff like that, and you don't actually need the physical toy. two things about the game that I was like, oh, Starlink, I did not see that coming. Story.
Oh.
A very like hardcore cinema that kicked the whole thing off of like
Starlink.
Starlink is like a power, and they're like on the deck, and like, you know, the like gray-haired old captain is talking to the young guy, and he's like, you get out there and you show him what Starlink can do. And he's like, all right, you know, I got like a definite Knack vibe from like these cutscenes. So like kind of look the same.
Wait, is a definite Knack vibe a positive or a negative?
It depends if you like Knack. But it just seemed that kind of lighthearted, you know, kind of like good old like Reboot. I don't know if you remember that show. Just like kind of like a charming. Maybe it takes its lore a little too seriously, but like, it's entertaining.
Brandon,
it's over the top.
This game seemed like it has some heart, man.
It's got heart, and the team, like, I was there when the team got a best hardware award. Like, somebody walked up and like it was Christmas, man. They lost their mind. They were like, we got an award. So yeah, they had a lot of passion, and everything was very hands-on. They were like, we invite as a judge, they let me, you know, actually get my hands on the game to make sure, like, okay, I'm actually playing this. And they were like constantly encouraging me. They're like, switch it out, try out new weapons, switch it. I'm like, I'm good. I like my setup here. I'm gonna stick with this.
Yeah.
So it starts out, they played the first part, which is just very simple, flying around, you know, locking onto targets. They, you know, swapped out a couple of weapons, and then a big cruiser comes by, smashes into our main ship that I was docked on before it started. Goes to a cutscene of that crashing down to Earth. So I was like, okay, cutscenes in between space and planets. I guess I was expecting that. And then our pilot recovers, and he's on the ground, and the ship is locked to the ground. So it's kind of like I'm like driving a tank around, basically. So I'm hovering over the ground, but I can't fly up because the main ship is destroyed. So I got to go around, and I had to blow up this thing that was causing interference, and it was stopping the ship from taking off again. Just kind of like strafing, running around, blowing this thing up. They recommended that I switch to, I was like doing a machine gun and a flamethrower, and they were like, use this guy because it just like lobs these huge bombs, and like is easier to take out like a stationary target because it'll do a ton of damage to it every time. Little boss fight, and then get back into the action. He can finally take off again and starts flying around exploring the planet. And he's like, we got really into the lore, like really nerdily, like we wanted to come up with an excuse for everything. So you're seeing there's all of these like whale bones and big, you know, like the crate dragon on Tatooine. He's like, these things used to live on this planet when there was water here, but all the water went away, so it's now a desert planet, and you can see all the carcasses of all these things that used to live here. And I was like, oh, cool. And then the second thing he did that I was not expecting, he hit a button, took off, went through the environment, and went straight into space.
Nice.
Wow. And he was like, so you
Brandon,
can see
I'm really into this.
He's like, so you can see our ship again, that we're back. He's like, that's, you know, gone back to the area. And he like moved around. He's like, you can see that planet there. You can see that planet there. You can see that planet there. He's like, you can go to all of those. You can go do missions.
When he went up and he went through the atmosphere into space, was there any technical problems whatsoever? Just like a smooth sailing?
No, it just, it's not, I wouldn't say it was more detailed than No Man's Sky, but it didn't. I wouldn't say it looked better than No Man's Sky.
Okay.
You know, like it definitely is a cartoony vibe. You imagine like Knack in space. Again, it's like that. It's that kind of like
Knack in
charming,
space,
right?
you say?
But like that charm. Hey, don't rule Knack 2 out yet. We have not played the whole game. It's just that kind of charming, you know, cartoony Saturday morning vibe. Did not take it. It might have taken itself a little too seriously, but it was not. I didn't get to meet a villain. You know, there was not like no one got like kidnapped and tortured or anything. Like it was pretty lighthearted. But that really surprised me, and I kept like asking him again, like, wait, I can go over that planet right now? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, okay, that's more than I was expecting from this kind of Toys to Life like space game. Major question, I was a little disappointed in the team in not bringing this information to E3, because as a collector, as somebody who has played Toys to Life before, give me a little hint of how this works, but they were not saying anything about packaging. And it makes me a little nervous, because what I don't want to do is, if I find a ship I like, if I find a character that I like and I want to stick to that, I might just want to get like a gun. You know, I might just want to get like $5, just get a little like add-on rocket thing that I can just throw. All the add-ons are the same. So if you want to take a wing off and just put a rocket where that wing was, you can. Like all the little like fasteners are all the same type. So you can just keep like stacking on and being crazy if you want to. But I just imagine if I was in Toys R Us and they were just like, oh, here's this flamethrower seeking bomb, and just like, $4, okay, I'll get that and like add it onto my ship.
Don't you
but
think
if I got to drop $20 or $30 on a huge ship to just take that one small thing off of it, that'll be a bummer.
Do you think that could be seen as a negative, though, from a first-timer's perspective? Like those who have not fought in the Toys to Life wars before, right? When they're going, they're like, Starlight sounds cool, and then they go into the aisle, and it's like, there are a zillion different things to buy for Starlight. Where do I start?
Sure.
So how do you find a compromise there?
I think Skylanders has that, and I think people get it. Like Skylanders kind of goes a little bit overboard. Like Skylanders literally has like, you would get like loot boxes that are like boxes.
Yeah.
Like you actually buy like a box. And it's like, okay, boop. And they're like, I get the loot box, and it's like, well, now what do I do with this plastic thing? So I think I think if you're gonna package stuff, I would say 3 types of packaging is the most you're going to want to do with this game. Obviously, it's going to have some kind of a starter pack. I would assume there's 1 ship with it, maybe more. That would be great. Maybe 2 pilots and 1 ship. And then you have your ships, which I get the pilot from there. I get my, its own ship, which has its own special, abilities, and maybe a couple extra add-ons. And then little tiny guys, clearly off to the right, that are just like special add-ons.
Sure.
And it just comes to how you label it, how you explain it in the packaging, if you price it competitively. But like, I don't know what's in the starter pack, and I don't know how they're going to package it. And it's like, that is, I'm very reserved to like put a verdict on this game because that's a huge deal.
Absolutely,
it's like
yeah.
if that starter pack's $60 with 1 ship, or like I don't know.
I think if they don't announce some sort of Knack ship, then I'm going to be a little disappointed after these impressions.
And it is exciting to fly out into space and fly back down to the planet, but if there's only 5 planets and the game's 5 hours long, then it's not that exciting. So like, there definitely are a lot of things that I would want to know about this game before I would unreservedly say, yeah, Blood, play it. You know? That always is the risk with Toys to Life, that it is a substantial investment. But like, they're so enthusiastic about it. It surprised me in a lot of ways. Everything feels right. Like I was not playing and like, oh, my gun fell off. Like everything snaps on and feels really good. The quality didn't blow me away, but at the same time it was very light. And so I think that was kind of the compromise, that they're like, we'll just make the colors work. And speaking of colors, it's a little brutal to have like a blue and gray ship and just like put a red wing on it. Like, I don't know if I'll be doing that too much.
Right.
But excited to learn more. And I think I'll have more concrete things to say about it once I get more of that specific information. But
have they talked about multiplayer at all with Starlink?
Did not get into multiplayer.
Okay.
Yeah, do not know a thing. Good question though, man.
Okay.
I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Starlink. What you got, Blood?
I got a couple smaller things.
Get some water.
I saw some
Yo, grab me one.
Yeah.
some adventure games, point-and-click adventure games from Daedalic,
Okay.
who seems to, they're always putting stuff out that, they seem to
Nice.
to know their audience, I think. The first one is called The Pillars of the Earth, which is based on an 80s novel, which I guess is apparently like one of the best-selling novels around the world, and especially in Germany. They're saying there's not many books that have sold more than it.
Doesn't that always kind of bum you out when
Someone's-
you hear something and you don't know anything about it, and they're like, it's super famous, it's known
Right.
everywhere. Yeah.
Well, Battle Chasers.
Yeah.
And I was like, poof, never heard of that.
Yeah.
Right. But it's essentially it's centered of all things around a cathedral and the story of how that cathedral came to be. And he was talking about how, in the Middle Ages, like cathedrals, they weren't just there for the sake of being a place of worship. They like attracted people to towns, and they were a huge source for economy for all of these surrounding vendors and hotels and everything else like that, for people that came out there. And 12th century, and all like 2D hand painted backgrounds. And there's 5 playable characters. 3 of them are major characters, and it takes place over 40 years.
The story?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he talked about the character you play as is an outlaw in the original sense of the word, which I found very fascinating. Where he's like, it's not that he was ejected from society or something. It was just that, in that period, like, you lived within the law if you lived in a town. If you lived outside of the town, like, laws didn't really apply to you.
Right.
And so, you're kind of out there surviving on your own, at risk for whoever's coming by, and there's not really any protection over your life in a way. He lives in a cave. He's like somehow got a hold of a book and practices reading, and it actually becomes kind of a plot point kind of early on in the demo that he showed, because you hear it was interesting because you start off hunting, and you do like a little kind of quick time event to hunt a deer that comes up, and then afterwards you do. He talked about how like a lot of the charm of the book is just kind of hearing about people's like what they had to do to survive day-to-day life stuff. And so you have to like gather firewood and like smoke the meat, but you kind of have this choice where it's like, okay, you can either smoke the meat or you hear like this crying off in the woods, and so you can go and investigate the crying. And so you go to the crying and you find that there's this baby there, and this monk that's kind of taking the baby to go to care for it. And what you essentially find out is that the mother had died in childbirth, and the family just kind of like they were just overwhelmed, and they just like the father just like left the baby like along with the mother. And so that's like why you both go out there. But then the father and his sons or whatever come back. They realize that they shouldn't have done what they've done, and they come back, but you're there, and so they think that you've had something to do with like taking the baby or whatever. And then you kind of explain things, and then you sort of get like pulled into their group. So there's a lot of interesting things to the story, I think, and they talk about how even though you follow the main plot line that already exists in the book, of course, but decisions that you make, you can end up saving characters that died at certain points along the way. I'm trying to think about some of the other things they were saying. There's the dialogue wheel. He says that sometimes you can just sort of let that timer pass, and saying nothing is like a fifth option on the dialogue wheel, and people respond based on you saying nothing. Trying to think about what else. They say that it's the biggest 2D game that they've done, and they're releasing it in 3 installments, so sort of episodically. But you actually, when you buy the game, you buy it all at once. So you're not like buying it episode by episode. Right. It's like you pay for the game, and they're gonna release part 1, and then part 2 and 3 are gonna come later on. And then the other game that they had is called State of Mind, which is also a point-and-click adventure game, but it looks completely different. It's 3D models, but kind of to distinguish it, they're like really angular. Like you see like all of the polygons on these characters' faces and such. And it kind of plays into the themes of the game, because it's kind of like a futuristic dystopian like noir thriller. And they talk about how it's in 2048 in Berlin, and they talk about how there's reality, which is all messed up and everything going on, but then there's also sort of like a Matrix. There's this virtual world where people can just essentially decide to upload their minds and like, I'm just gonna live here,
Sounds good.
and forget about the real world.
Yep.
And so there's like these factions of people that are kind of debate about these things, about if this is good for society or not.
Have you told Ian about this game?
I haven't.
Okay, because he's really into that Black Mirror episode where it's basically the same.
Yeah. I think they might have mentioned that
Imperial.
at some point, or maybe
Really?
it's just Ian talking about it all week that's gotten stuck in my head.
I like that.
But interestingly enough, you play as a reporter who writes about technology but kind of hates technology at the same time.
Been there.
So, one of the things that happened, which I thought was kind of a weird thing to have in the demo, but there's like this some kind of accident, some kind of explosion, and so like the first part of the demo, you're in this hospital, and there is a doctor who is just basically asking you like all these questions that you should know the answers to, and it's sort of part of the tutorial, and so it's like. So he shows like a picture of your wife and like, who's this person? And like, man, pick. I don't know who she is. So like, you pick until you figure out. It's like, okay, that's the wife. Oh. And then so some of them you can assume the answers, and some of them I was just like picking the wrong answers on purpose to see what he would say to me. Just sort of get your memory back, get yourself into the game. When you get back to the apartment. your wife has she's gone somewhere for whatever reason, and she's left her robot there, so you wouldn't have a robot, but your wife does, and the robot is like constantly, asking if it can do this or that for you, and he's just like, just leave me alone. It's funny just like how like much annoyance this guy has with the robots and with like everything that's going on. You can also people will call you, and you can like just decide not to pick up the phone, and that will have story impact. If you're calling people's phone calls. Nice.
Can you see who's calling?
I think you can. Yeah, at least see the. Yeah, you can see the name and number. I think. It's coming out in Q1 of.
It just reminds me. I remember doing that GTA 4 because I played. Spoiler alert: there's a friend you have that double crosses you in GTA 4.
Yeah.
And it's someone you can date. And I remember the second time I played GTA 4, I was like, nope. No, like get a call from her, like, nope. It's like, not this time. Sorry.
So it's coming out in 2018, and it's PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and it's Daedalus' first game that's going to come out on the Switch.
Nice. A lot of more games I'm finding out post E3 that are like, oh yeah, and that's a Switch too. It's like, that's a big deal.
Right.
Like, that's, there's some games that just like, that's the perfect type of game I've been looking for in that console. So, yay. Very exciting.
I could see interactive novel, point and click adventures kind of things working pretty well, again, on the go.
Cool.
All right. Well, I got plenty more games, but
Okay.
they're all stuff I'm pretty sure we've talked about. And there's stuff that I don't have a huge hot take on. I've just like experienced, have not been here to share my opinions.
Sure.
So maybe I'll rattle through. How many you got? 2 more left?
I've got 2 more left.
Okay. So maybe I'll rattle through a couple.
I'm all out.
Well, I'll do one. I'll do one that I know no one played. Guaranteed. Lego Dimensions.
Yep. Nailed it.
So they got 3 final things coming to Lego Dimensions that I got to try out. But a very alarming thing happened while I was there that I'm possibly reading too much into. I thought based on sales of Animal Crossing Amiibo that we were getting an announcement to C3. Clearly I was wrong. So don't base my market analyst Pactor style, predictions. But I finished the demo. And she's like, oh, and now that you're finished with the demo, you can choose from either the Fantastic Beasts or the Ghostbusters level pack, which is like $40. I was like, whoa. And she's like, yeah. She's like, it's pretty cool that we're giving these out. I'm like, yeah, I'll take Fantastic Beasts. And I got it.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that I got the whole, that's not a good sign. That they're giving away.
Sure.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I was just thinking, but E3 is come and gone. We have no idea what they're doing past this. Mm-hmm. And they do like to, sometimes they'll drop trailers out of nowhere for like new waves that are coming, but like, I just, like a super awesome giveaway, like felt a little like we got some extra trucks of stuff that we got to offload. So that made me a little nervous. But if you are still into Dimensions, you are still excited about more stuff that is going to happen. We have not gotten Powerpuff Girls yet, or
they're doing Powerpuff Girls?
Teen Titans, which I'm excited about. The thing I'm most excited about, Beetlejuice. So Powerpuff Girls were great. The thing that's nice about all of the new characters coming to from Teen Titans and from Powerpuff Girls, they all fly, which is fantastic. So I was able to just zip around the environment super fast. The environment they let us run around was from Teen Titans. It was specifically Teen Titans Go, which I have not watched, so I did not get any jokes or references that popped up in the world. I do, love the Teen Titans, so I was familiar with, Starfire and Raven and Cyborg and these characters. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is Robin and Cyborg have already been in Lego Dimensions. So you have Robin from the Lego Batman movie, and you have Cyborg from just Justice League, from just them like adding those DC characters to the game. So when those characters go into this open world of Teen Titans, they automatically become their Teen Titan variants, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
But what's tricky and kind of confusing, and I could see kids being like, nah, and it's not working. Technically, those characters, Cyborg and Robin, are not attached to that world. So what you can do when you go into the open world, everybody that is a part of a franchise, so when they added A-Team and it was just B.A. Baracus, B.A. could go into that world, but you needed B.A. to do it. So you couldn't like put Superman on the base and have Superman just go running into that world. They'd be like, you need an A-Team character to get in. Once I had B.A. and B.A. went in, Superman could join, anybody could jump in, but I needed that base character. Robin and Cyborg are not those characters. So if you're Robin and you go up to the Teen Titans world, you can't get in. You gotta be Starfire or Raven or Beast Boy, because they're the new characters that prompt the download.
I see.
That are like attached to those things. So I think it's just the way they have the game set up. They're like, we cannot have one character that opens up multiple worlds. So that I was like, yeah, I could see 8-year-olds getting a little confused, being like, like Robin, like jumping into that circle, like, why isn't this working? Do not know the Powerpuff Girls enough to understand their different abilities and like whether like, ooh, can you do this? Because I know that character does that.
Bubbles is the best.
The blonde?
Yes.
Bubbles can. There's everything in the Lego games is puzzle based.
Okay.
So if you have an ability, it's like multiple people can do this type of thing. And one of the things in the Lego dimensions is glass shattering. So there'll be some barriers that some people can do a sonic attack, some people can do a certain type of spell. Bubbles will cry. She'll go, and you hold down circle button, and it'll build, and you let go, and she lets out this big wail, and that like will shatter glass. So that was fun, and they're adorable. They also come with other. I think the way they do the Powerpuff Girls is they'll have one pack that's 2 of the girls and one item, and then one of the girls will be on its own in a separate thing. I did not pay attention to how those were packaged.
Kyle is not comfortable with referring to Bubbles as the blonde.
That's the. What else do I got to differentiate him for not knowing?
Blue.
She's in blue. Okay.
Yeah. It's okay.
Sorry, Ken.
Brendan. So Lego Dimensions is really cool to me because of some of the things that they're working with. Ghostbusters, yes. Simpsons, yes. Powerpuff Girls, yes. Beetlejuice, yes. But there are 2 things. Like you were talking before, it's all about how you sell it. And you're mentioning $40 for some of these things. I already spend every single dollar I own on video games and video game related items.
Right.
So how expensive is it to like reasonably get into Lego Dimensions? First, and second, every time I think about getting into it, I'm just like, Jones has already conquered this.
Right.
Like,
just come over
it's
and
just Jones land. Like,
Yeah.
there's no room for me here.
You want your Starlink fix?
Okay.
You come to me.
All right. I'm the middleman.
I do not want to have confusion there. What they gave me was a level pack. That is the most expensive thing beyond the base game that you could buy in Dimensions.
Yeah.
Because it comes with a thing to decorate your base. So with Ghostbusters, you can build like their Chinese restaurant where their base is.
Right.
And so it's like all that extra stuff. It's a whole level, so you can play through the entirety of that film. And you get a couple characters and some extra stuff. All the new characters that are being released, Beetlejuice, Powerpuff Girls, Teen Titans, will all be like $15, I think. For each thing that they sell, comes a little like, triangle shaped package. So yeah, Powerpuff Girls, they have a little trail that follows them, like looks like a little ribbon, like which I don't know if like is indicative of specifically the way those were animated, but again, just love that they can fly. And Beast Boy can fly because he can turn into a bird, and I was like, yeah, how does Beast Boy fly? And then I'm like, of course, he's Beast Boy. And if you jump into the water, he automatically turns into a dolphin. If you do some of his attacks, he'll do certain different types of things like associated with those attacks. Starfire.
Sorry, this is important to me.
Yes.
Somebody in chat asked, "Can you play as Mojo Jojo, the green Powerpuff Girls green ape with a?"
I do know that character, and
yes.
no, you can't. No, I don't believe so. You maybe do missions for him, but again, we were in the Teen Titans world. We were not in the Powerpuff Girls world,
gotcha.
So you'll have to jump in there to maybe see if they're in there. But Starfire and Raven can fly. They both kind of have similar attacks, even though, like Ravens are like green and bluish and Starfire's like pink. But they can do, the kind of thing where they have like a steady attack if you hold the button down, and if you just tap it while you're running, they'll just send out blasts. And Beetlejuice is more of a melee guy. He's got the hammers. That's like his main attack. The arms get really long. He's got the hammer, so he'll do like a spin attack or a slam. The voice is great. It was fun being another character and having the guy I was co-op with be Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
So I'm just like flying through the city and I hear like, come on, baby, like in the background.
Nice.
It's like, okay, cool. So I just, like, out of all the things that they announced, some are exciting, like, oh, Knight Rider. I love Knight Rider. I'm curious to see how that adapts. But you hear Beetlejuice, and it's like, that's so perfect. Like, that's such a great thing to just drop in any crazy environment. And one of the things that they do that Infinity did as well, rest in peace, was character interaction. So if you had weird characters that bumped into each other in the world, they would comment and be like, whoa, and say something specific. I think Batman, when he bumps into Bart Simpson, he's like, is this the infamous Bartman? And so, like, there are parts where you're like, oh, okay, I can see how they would say that. And, like, I bet Beetlejuice has got a whole bunch of those. But only had a little bit to play with the game and try out I was just constantly, like, swapping characters to try everybody out. But there it is. That's all I will talk about Lego Dimensions.
Knight Rider, Brandon, maybe... I don't know, maybe somebody can provide some perspective on this, because I feel like maybe Knight Rider is just something that's beyond my time, because I feel like they keep doing Knight Rider things. Like they reboot Knight Rider, they're doing all this
Right.
stuff, and it seems like no one seems to care, and I don't really care. I don't have any attachment to Knight Rider.
A-Team resonates with you, but Knight Rider not so much?
I feel like I see more love for A-Team. I feel like
Okay.
I see A-Team quotes or A-Team jokes, and just like the joke sometimes seems like Knight Rider itself. Again, I'm not trying to dog on it, but I don't see that fandom the way that I do a few other things.
I mean, I think it's too like both of those franchises don't make sense to me as reboots or continuing franchises. It's like A-Team is very much those actors and those characters, and same thing like Knight Rider is
And
very much
the
David
80s.
Hasselhoff. Yeah,
Right.
80s, very important. 80s.
yeah.
But I just saw somebody in chat say, "Hey, Knight Rider resonates with me. Knight Rider is cool." So maybe I just don't.
There
know.
you go.
There you go.
Also, nowadays a talking car is not out of the ordinary.
Right.
What you got, Blood?
I got a quick one. Maybe Ben can pull some more out of me on this. I don't know. Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah. So I watched the 30-minute demonstration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you may have seen more than I actually got to play.
Okay.
I haven't really played a Warriors game in probably 10 years, and even then I didn't play much of them.
Okay.
And I had a hard time seeing anything that was any different than what I had played 10 years ago.
I'm really frustrated. Okay, I just got to get this out there. So they're saying over and over and over again during this presentation how much they care about Fire Emblem, how much of Fire Emblem is in there, and they're like, "Hey, cool! There's going to be the weapon triangle system that you know and love from Fire Emblem," and then the only thing that they breed in '83 is just a bunch of sword users. So you get no sense of how that functions at all in the game. Just a little pet peeve is all.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think the characters they had were Marth and Corrin. So I was just able to basically pop back and forth between them.
Okay.
And then and they would just constantly be throwing like new little side objectives at you. So like at first you'd like be trying to take out the captains, and then then a little bit afterwards you'd have to defend some of your captains, and then some other Fire Emblem characters would come in to the battle, and you'd go after them.
Right.
And then they're like kind of the super attacks or whatever, which you would build up that meter in like literally like 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so you would just kind of keep seeing that super animation over and over again, which it's fine, it was fun, but it's kind of funny for even the person at the demo station to say, like, yeah, don't worry too much about all the regular enemies. They're just like paper dolls.
Yeah.
And then you just like slash, and like 30 guys lift up into the air, and then you unleash your big attack.
It seems like a big thing is that stun circle meter for like the captains that you're trying to take out. How necessary did you feel like it was to get that meter down, or were you didn't really have to think about it?
I didn't feel like I was thinking all that much. Like,
Sure.
there were some extra things that you could do, like some of the other characters that were in there, you could kind of do team up attacks with them.
Yeah.
And kind of pull them into the battle, and you could swap between, Corinne and Marth
Sure.
at any time to kind of like manage the battle that way.
So during the presentation, they showed pair up attacks. They're like, hey, you can pair up. What a cool thing for modern Fire Emblem games. And it just seemed like a slightly bigger super move. It didn't.
Right.
I don't know. It didn't seem especially clever, I guess. Did you mess around with that a lot?
I tried, but like you're saying, like I didn't. It was really hard for me. It's funny because like I played through this demo, I completed it successfully, and I feel like I was just kind of like running around from point to point, and okay, slash at this guy, kind of try to vary my moves, but I didn't feel like I had a lot of variation to really work with.
Yeah.
But maybe it was just a matter of being thrown into it and not having a lot of instruction really.
The one thing that I did think was legitimately cool that they did show during the demo is like on the map you have like sprite versions of your characters and Fire Emblem style. It's on a grid. The map is on a grid, and you can send them over to specific points. Did you mess around with that at all?
I didn't see that at all. No,
Okay.
I just saw kind of the typical warrior style map where like you see all the different things that are happening.
Right, because my hope in the full game is that you're going to need to use that with whoever is on your team,
For
essentially,
sure, yeah.
and moving different points. But yeah, watching that presentation, Blood, was really frustrating because they you level up and it will do the stats like it does in Fire Emblem, but I didn't get a sense of how important those stats were or how differentiated they would be between the different characters, because every time somebody leveled up in the presentation, it seemed like they leveled up almost everything every time, and so I'm not sure if that's going to matter at all. They mentioned that there will be a support system in the game, that you will be able to build up relationships between characters, but they didn't show it off, and they didn't show off the weapon triangle, and so it just seemed like another one of those. I like the design of the new characters. I think their models look good, but yeah.
Yeah, I did like, when Corrin unleashes her attacks, I did like the animation with the wings coming out and all of that.
Right, the dragon form, yeah. Yeah.
To some, that might just be enough.
Right?
Yeah, well...
just that celebration.
I really hope... They've come out and said that they're going to put Awakening and Faith's characters and they're going to focus on that. And I guess it makes sense. I think for a lot of new fans, that's what they're going to gravitate to. But... yeah, I hope they have some interesting picks. Something that they said is like Koei Tecmo brought a list of characters to them. It's like, here's what we were thinking about putting in the game. And then Intelligent Systems was like, okay, but you need to put these people in. Okay. And so I really want to know what Intelligent Systems came back with. And it was like, no, get these guys in for sure. So excited to see. But yeah.
I have 4 games I'm going to skip.
Dragon Quest Heroes is good.
I'm explaining why I'm going to skip them. Because I think we've covered these.
Yeah.
Dissidia Final Fantasy, I freaked the hell out of Huber, dropping my hot take on there of the HUD being too intense. and just like...
That might have been the most frustrating demo of the entire show for me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Because
I got destroyed. I played as Cecil, and it was cool because I could switch between Paladin and Dark Knight, and I knew how to do that, but it's like... I wasn't sure what my default thing was. It's like, I get I have special abilities, and I get the movement, and I get the targeting, and I know who my opponents are. But when all my cooldowns are down, what am I doing? Like, what's the main? Just felt like it was tough. It felt like every time I could get in close to somebody, they would just whack me 50 feet away.
Yep.
I was like, okay, am I horrible at this or what? Yeah.
Sure.
But again, I'm just not something to go on and on and on about because I do not have a lot of history with Dissidia. I played the first game on PSP just to try it out, and I love all of those characters.
Brandon.
But
you, myself, Brad, and Damiani all played Dissidia, and they would only let us play one round, and there was no great explanation of what you can do outside of the most basic of here's what the buttons do on the controller, but not an explanation of anything. And all of us walked away being like, yep, we played one round, we got destroyed, we didn't have enough time to understand any systems whatsoever. So yeah, we will. It looked good.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous. Knack 2. I mean, what more can you say?
Oh yeah, we covered that pretty well.
I only played a couple minutes. I did play it though. I did get my hands on it, and it was fun. I mean, it was. Again, you're talking to the guy who likes Infinity, who likes Skylanders, who likes these games where I can just turn my brain off and just smack the hell out of everything, and just oh, look at that big pile of things over there, spin attack. So I enjoyed that part of it, and I was playing with a. One of the developers. It was not a scheduled appointment, but it was in between Sony appointments back in their little PR area. And so I was like, hey, as long as I'm here in Act 2, let's do it. And he had a great vibe too. He was joking. He's like, this is your most anticipated game from E3, right? So he knew. They're like, maybe it was not. And so it was just nice kind of letting the air out and just running through it and enjoying the game getting in the mindset I think you should be in, which is just it's just fun to go through this world fast. This is not maybe something I'm going to dwell in these environments forever. But
he knew.
The pace of that demo I thought was good.
And I appreciate that.
Detroit Become Human, which was the same demo we've played many, many times. So I don't know what else I can add to it.
It was the first time I played it.
I saw somebody walk into the final scenario with 99% probability of success and failed it.
Cool.
And that's awesome.
That is awesome.
And he put the controller down and looked around at everybody, and it was right before the PlayStation conference. So there was a lot of people standing around this guy watching him do it.
And he was intentionally trying to succeed.
Well, 99%, man. That took a while. You got to really explore absolutely every single thing.
I didn't know if there was this big turnaround smile or something.
No.
Again, but...
And the dev just kind of it's shrugging his shoulders.
That happens, man.
Happens.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that.
Cool.
And I appreciate that even though you're increasing, like I said, you're increasing your probability of doing stuff, they still throw some curveballs at you. They still give you a lot of things that's yes or no. And you're like, I don't know. You haven't given me any. I just kind of got to really think of just kind of their personality and is now the time to be aggressive? That guy's got a gun to this kid's head, but I'm sorry, I'm going to save this guy. Right. Just morally, I'm going to take my stance here knowing that number's going to drop. but I still think I can get through this. And so it's not just like learn information, makes it easy, do the thing, done.
Yeah.
Like it's always tense. Like you're always afraid. Like, am I making the right decision at every step? And played Patapon, which I never played in my life.
Pata. Oh, Brandon, Patapon is great. Can we please do a Patapon? Oh, tell me you loved it.
It was great. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it was interesting to try to get the pace right. You know, because I like attack and it would run away and like let me get closer to it then. And so I what I'm looking for next is the depth. It's just like okay, now I really have ingrained all these different button combinations and all this stuff. Cool. But that was interesting to play that on a big screen. Everyone's like, how did it look? And it's like, well, it looked great. I mean, it's you know, it's you up-res that thing, and it's there's not a ton of colors going on. It's very clear lines, and you know, I was not confused at all playing Patapon.
When is that coming out?
I do not know.
Okay,
I think it's relatively soon.
Okay, great.
Patapon's one of those games that I love that I tweeted out my final list. It was like, here's everything I played at E3, and like I got one reply. It was like, Patapon!
Yeah! No.
Looking at all these games.
Oh,
like,
those games got like progressively better, yeah.
So those four I'll just fly through really quick. But I do want to talk about one game that I'm not sure if people talked about. I don't know if Hubert checked it out, Life is Strange, Before the Storm.
Oh. No!
No, we didn't get to.
Yeah.
Oh, oh no, that's
here we go. It's time. Let's do it. Get into it.
How did Hubert not check out Life is Strange?
I don't know.
He was the advocate for that game. He's the one that got me to play it.
I played the whole thing. I played the whole thing and I loved it.
All right. This is upsetting.
I'm conflicted. The activist part of me wants to get upset that Ashley's not in it and wants to we should maybe possibly think about boycotting this because, for voice actors.
Right.
But it's only 3 episodes. I don't get the sense that it's trying to compete with or trying to pick up on the same note that Life is Strange left off of. It's a prequel.
Yeah.
You are playing as a different character than you played as in the first game. The one thing that does kind of make the VO pill a little easier to swallow is that she's younger. And to me, Ashley's Chloe was very aggressive and very adult and very mature. And and this voice is a little higher pitched, a little more naive, a little more unsure, stutters a little more. And so it felt like kind of a different person. And so that didn't bother me that much. A lot of return of familiar characters. I don't know if I want to get too spoilery for people that I don't want to know specific details about decisions that were made and what happened in that story.
Yeah.
But it was Chloe kind of throwing herself into an environment that she was not familiar with around potentially dangerous people. And they let us make the decisions. And it's E3. We don't have any stakes in this. So of course, we're just fight, aggressive, insult, every worst thing we could possibly do. And one thing that I thought could maybe take a hit, and maybe people that kind of enjoyed Life is Strange but maybe digging into that emotionally or more interested in a lot of the gameplay stuff that game had to offer might be turned off by the fact that there is no superpower. She can't teleport and just doesn't tell, what's her name about it? I don't remember the name of the main character.
Max.
That doesn't tell Max, I learned how to teleport 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever, I somehow lost that ability, and I'm just not going to bring it up in conversation.
And so that's my biggest question is, especially for a game like Life is Strange, and Ian and Hubert definitely have put this into my mind regarding prequels, is Life is Strange is so much about slowly uncovering the nature of your abilities and the relationship that you have and other characters have with each other, and knowing all of that going into this prequel, does that kind of affect your perception of what's going on?
What I think was a powerful motivator for the first Life is Strange was inevitability.
Yeah.
The storm's going to hit. Know people are going to die. What are you going to do about it? Even to the points where you're going back in time. These events happened. This was a part of your history, and now it's a part of the future. You're going back and possibly getting the chance to change things that are going to happen. The change part is taken out, but the inevitability is still there because there's a very central character, Rachel, who is dead at the beginning. Well, missing, but spoiler alert, dead at the beginning of Life is Strange.
Brandon.
But gone. He's just not there. Not in the first game. Again, I'm trying to sell this for people that are possibly not going to be playing the first game. There's a character in that game that you do not get to experience anything of in the first Life is Strange. I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't know what she sounded like. I didn't know what her attitude was. I didn't know how her and Chloe met. I didn't know, all these circumstances she kind of hinted at in the first game.
Sure.
Again, getting back to the time travel and now seeing these things play out.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting in that, bumping into people that are maybe happy that you meet in Life is Strange and are very sad. You're like, oh yeah, there's that thing. Oh no, that's coming up. And so if you had played the first Life is Strange, you do get this sense of okay, I can maybe change things, or I can maybe, make decisions and discover my choice of how Chloe came to be and how she came to be the person that we played in the first Life is Strange. And And so that's interesting to me, that like going to areas that are new, like, oh yeah, I could maybe see that lighthouse in the distance, or I could see that beach, but we never got there, because I definitely got a good sense of space from the first Life is Strange, that I wasn't just bouncing around between different areas. It was like, oh yeah, they referenced that spot, and now I'm there. And there was a good mix, even just in the demo, of brand new environment, brand new series of characters coming at you, familiar environment, familiar characters. That might not like Chloe, because like they get to like her in Life is Strange, but like, oh yeah, we're going back, and they weren't friends. And the fact that it's 3 parts gives me the idea that like they're most interested in filling in that gap, in having you realize what this means to that old story, and not necessarily like really going out and making a competitive sequel. This isn't Life is Strange 2. This is Life is Strange, that part you missed. And it was interesting to play a demo that there were so many options just in that one thing to see how this could go, and having them prepare that type of a demo for E3, having people walk into the demo and walk out, and then the next people go in and get a totally different series of dialogue, totally different decisions, and it looked better. And that's one thing that bugged me about the first Life is Strange, is that it was rough around the edges. And it looks like the engine's running a little smoother. It looks like the characters run a little smoother. Lip sync's a little more accurate. So yeah, technically it looks like I'm impressed that they upped that. But if you're sensitive about that kind of stuff and you're like, it was just so perfect, I don't want to mess with it, then maybe you don't want to go back and like fill in all of these gaps. But I thought it was interesting. I thought about like, oh yeah, no powers. And then I was like, yeah, that's a good idea, because it might not make sense, and it might be trying a little too hard. They're like, well, we clearly got to do that. And they very smartly were like, that would screw this whole thing up. Let's just focus on this being a drama between these characters, and that'll be the weight of it.
Sure.
Before the storm.
So my last one here, it's weird because it's like I have a ton of notes, but I feel like it just like dipped on the surface of this, and I want to know so much more. I didn't get hands-on, but I was in a behind closed doors presentation, and I feel like I'd have such a stronger opinion of this game if I had gotten hands-on, and that's Ashen, the ID at Xbox game.
Yeah, this looks really cool.
That it kind of has this sort of this vibe that kind of feels like a mixture of, and I know other people said this before, but it's kind of like this mixture of like a Dark Souls and a Journey kind of thrown together. And what's really odd and interesting is where the Journey part comes in is that other players kind of come into your world and co-op with you, but they always look like an NPC, and they even have they explain that the reason that they don't have any faces on the characters is they want you to be able. They don't want you to have any preconceived notion of this person, of how much experience they've had with the game or anything like that. They want everything that you know about this person to be through their actions. So, not how they decorate themselves, not any of that other thing. So so it's really interesting how that's built in there. It's from the company it's a new developer. They're called Aurora 44. They're in New Zealand. They've actually worked at Weta on Lord of the Rings and such. The world, there's a lot of play on light and dark, and they're saying that there's there's no sun. There's like all the light is just coming from some kind of crazy rock formation that's kind of up above you, and then it's just creating like this really diffuse lighting through all the ash, and so the ash is just like light's just kind of coming from everywhere.
Oh.
And then they mentioned sky whales, which I would like to see a sky whale.
They mentioned sky whales but didn't show it? Oh.
Good year for sky whales.
Yeah.
Starlink's got sky whales. Even.
Does it?
Yeah. Well, all the things on there.
Here's the sky whale.
What other weird things they talk about? They talk about you drink water from rivers to replenish stamina.
Nice.
So that's something to keep in mind.
That there's rivers in every map, I'm hoping.
Yeah, there's got to be water sources to keep an eye out for. The dungeon actually required 2 players to open. So you had to like walk up to the dungeon with another person with you. And then they fought a couple of people out in the world are like these vagrants with like a lot of like stuff hanging off of like kind of skirts and such, and they look pretty interesting. When they got into the dungeon, it was like super dark, like just blackness everywhere, and just these lanterns that you were holding, kind of lighting your way. Unfortunately, Ben, there were spider ambushes.
Okay, so spiders totally fine. Two worst qualities a spider can have: hair, big no, and just big up front bitey fangs. How were the fangs and how was the hair?
Well,
because if they're just little non-hairy spiders, whatever.
yeah, I don't think
Throw 'em in the
I don't
trash.
think they're too hairy. I think with the art style, like it's not really
Great.
too hairy of a thing.
Can play.
There was like this crazy looking boss fight. They talked about shadows, which were like trapped memories of people. And then the boss, it was like again like this shadowy figure with like a mask on it, but it was sort of, you didn't always know where it was coming from, and it would make things even more intense by it would suck the light out of your lanterns temporarily.
Oh, cool.
So
Could you relight the lantern?
yeah,
like,
they would relight after a little bit, but
Okay.
then you're in a dark room, like super dark room with this boss
Sure.
coming around you.
That's cool.
Of course, they said there's a lot of emphasis on secrets. There was this thing at the end with like this giant woman with a mask, which I guess is some big NPC that you're going to be interacting with. But yeah, so they talked about. And the music is they talked about it's going to be like very ambient. They want the music to feel like it's a part of the world, and not just like songs playing all the time.
Sure, I'm assuming it'll. Does it change? Did it when you were encountered an enemy? Did it change suddenly, and then when you got away from that enemy, there was a different sort of ambience going on? Like, was it dynamic in that way, or?
I don't remember anything particularly like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it was just that's something they were describing after they'd actually finished playing, so I wasn't able to like hear that and then watch for it, unfortunately. But yeah, they do talk about they're considering being able to play with friends, but again, they actually kind of want you to play with the stranger and have to learn to work with somebody else in playing the game, and like I said, yeah, they want what they do to define the player. And then the other thing they talked about is they're not really going to have an overt XP or character levels for your characters. Your progression is going to be more defined from finding other NPCs and building up your town and your home area.
Cool.
So it's interesting to me, but like I said, I felt like I got such a light touch on that game that like I don't know.
Good game, bad demo.
Not necessarily a bad demo, but it just like I want to sink farther into it. Yeah.
I got a game coming up that I'm very excited about, but it's again the demo was like okay.
I have one more. I keep unearthing these games.
But it sounds very impressionistic. It sounds very like arts, not artsy, but like painterly. Like you brought up. I think Journey was an interesting comparison. I hadn't connected those two games before, just with the art style and presentation. But
yeah, definitely more of a minimalistic style across the board.
What you got, Ben?
Justin Spear originally told me about this series, and for those of you who don't know Justin Spear, he was a former reviews editor at Game Trailers, and Justin Spear is great. Justin Spear was always awesome to talk about video games with. He always had really insightful comments, and he always he taught me about a lot of games that were not on my radar, a lot of series that were not on my radar. He had eclectic taste and deep taste, which I liked. And he always talked about Culdcept, and he would see me playing Hearthstone. He's like, "Hey man, I see you're playing Hearthstone. Play Culdcept, you'll be really into it." And I bought the PS2 one. It's still sealed at my house, but I haven't gotten around to playing it. And I saw that there was a chance to play Culdcept Revolt, which is a new one coming out on 3DS. And I was like, I'm gonna do it for Justin. It's time. I need to play it. And so I did, and I really liked it. I liked it so much that this was the most time that I spent playing a game at E3. E3 because I had like an hour window and I just kept
cool.
playing.
Oh,
and
wow.
like to the point where somebody came up and it's like, oh, you seem to really be enjoying Culdcept. And I'm like, well, no one's behind me. Yeah. But yeah, I was playing a lot. And what they kept saying to everybody who was demoing it was it's a mix between Monopoly and Magic, the Gathering. And that's a pretty good shorthand for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
So
Culdcept.
you're on this board. It has a bunch of colored squares.
I like both those things.
Yes, Brandon. I thought of you as I was playing this. I was like, Brandon would be way into it. And it's a dense game, and so I don't want to go crazy explaining every single mechanic in Culdcept. But basically, you roll dice and you'll land on a square. And like Monopoly, you can plant. If there's nobody there, you can plant a monster there, and you can build that monster up by spending a resource known as magic. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to a total number of magic. And magic is used for a bunch of different things. In order to use certain cards, you need to expend magic. And to build people up, you need to have magic. So magic is a very valuable resource. You want to think about how you're doing it. And then when you go and you land on a spot where a monster already is, you fight. You can pick a card and fight that monster. And then if you want to, you can invest more into it by equipping armor to give it more health. So if you have somebody defending, you might want to do that. Or you can use a weapon card to do a greater amount of attack. And it's just really fun. There's a bunch of things you can do. You can do cards that will make you roll a specific thing. So you can either do that for yourself or your opponent. If you play a bunch of monsters together, like in a row of the same set. So like if there's a blue section of the board and you put a bunch of blue monsters there and they're all together, they'll get stronger as a result. And so that's really cool. And what I did not know anything about Culdcept at all, not a single thing. And they had an excellent tutorial,
Nice.
just a series of 5 missions, sort of a prologue where it explained every single mechanic really well. And by the end, I was like, okay, I understand the basics of this game very well. Nice job. Thank you, game. Because there is a lot to you. And yeah, it was just a ton of fun. The major complaint that I had is like the general story sense that I got is, oh, hey, you're a guy who doesn't remember anything at all. You have amnesia, and it turns out you're super powerful, and oh, you have powers that only you can do. It just seemed like the most mundane of setups for a video game, but maybe that'll get better in the full thing. You can play solo. It also has online or local full player.
Cool.
Multiplayer, so that's really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why I was wondering. I'd be curious to play something like this multiplayer.
Yeah. But loved it. Want to play more. Coming out late August. I think it's August 29th is the date on that. But yeah, I want that.
What was the title again? Somebody just
Culdcept Revolt.
Nice. How many Culdcepts have there been?
I don't
who knows?
know.
All right, yeah.
I think there was
A lot, so-
I think there was
Yeah.
one on 360. I think the ones that have come out here. I believe there was one on PS2.
Yeah,
I
Culdcept
think-
Saga rings a bell for some
Yes,
reason.
I think that was on 360.
That's okay. That's the one I
And then I
was
don't
tempted to
know
check
if
out.
any other Culdcepts came out here. Those are the two that I'm familiar with.
Oh, yeah, here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's come out more in Japan.
It's Japan, right?
Okay. I got 5 more games, and then we're done.
You have 5 more.
5
Nice.
more.
Okay.
But these are heavy hitters.
Okay.
And these are things I think might have come up, but I want to get into them.
Okay.
Please.
First game is Assassin's Creed Origins.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about this twice now, yeah.
Cool. Well, it's pretty. It's Assassins. Major thing that changed for me was the combat. Hello, Souls. Like R2 heavy attack, R1 light attack. A really effective quick dodge. I got stunned a lot, and it kind of pissed me off. Like there was a lot of like.
Sure.
Like to me in Bloodborne, again, I've dabbled in Dark Souls 3, haven't played a lot, so like don't have the Souls experience. But what I liked in Bloodborne was if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're gonna take your licks, but you can keep moving on. Like the detriment to you being a dummy and standing there when that thing happened was your health bar went. Whereas like in this, you take a hit, and I got stunned for like a really long time. Like I'd fall over and like. Try to get back up and like this is just really frustrating. Like
Right.
I got it that I got hit, but like just don't slow the whole experience down for me.
Yeah.
And that was just because they had one demo that was like open world, do a quest, and another one that was just like a gauntlet, like you're in like an arena. And so like that one was just extremely combat focused, and that was just one thing that was kind of frustrating in that area. But world was gorgeous. Man, I could have just it was just so nice to come back to this franchise. And my favorite thing that I just want to say very quickly before I move on, and don't want to talk too much about a game that we've talked about a lot, but that I want people to admire about Assassins, that I think is a huge upgrade for the series. That might seem like a small detail, but it's very important to me. And it's something that has bothered me in every single Assassin's Creed that has ever been made. and that is no one knows I'm an assassin in this. Really, nobody in this area. I don't look suspicious at all. Like,
sure.
I don't seem like I kind of stick out just a little bit, you know, and like, I love the customization. I love that you can make yourself all sorts of different colors and have these crazy elaborate gold armor. But like every time I would duck into a crowd or like sit on a bench and somebody's like, where'd he go? And it's like, yeah, I wonder if it could be that guy wearing a hood in that corner.
It's a great point.
And for the first time, the protagonist just blends so beautifully into this world.
Okay.
Like, I really don't feel that somebody will walk by me and be like, huh? Like, everybody just, there's just so much ornamentation on everyone. Like, the buildings I'm going into are way gaudier than I am. Like, everything just kind of seemed synced together. I think having a little more time with this world, they've just kind of gelled everything. Granted, cool. I might have literally, you might be wearing like the starter outfit, and then like the next thing I wear is completely ridiculous. Like, a big like Sphinx head or something.
Right.
Who knows?
Rathalos armor.
But I just liked it. Just the world seemed believable, and it's I cannot wait to get back to that environment and just run around and find secrets in that world and swim under stuff and.
Brendan, I would love to make a show called "What Does Jones Want?" Because like you always have that one thing that I never could predict what somebody would want. Like the Sea of Thieves, you're like, oh, they finally have a balcony. It's like, oh, okay, I never would have guessed that.
I got corrected on Twitter. Somebody said, according to pirate lore, captains slept with the crew. So that's why there was no bed in Black Flag, because they did not sleep in that room. They would just have private meetings in there and battle strategies and stuff like that. If you wanted a moment alone to read a book, he would go in there. But Far Cry 5. Anybody actually play it?
I played it.
Okay.
Did Huber?
Huber played it.
Okay.
But he played it at the pre-event.
Yeah, and I played that. I played it right before the Sony press conference. I still want to play that game. I think it's fascinating, but I was done with that demo in a minute and 30 seconds. Like, it's just like, you're in this town, clear the town. And I was like, all right. And I watched the guy ahead of me, like, go up into the sniper tower, take the sniper rifle, paint the targets, pick them off one by one.
Huber went in head first, by the way.
I ran. Well, I was testing the buttons, and I chucked a stick of dynamite. I was like, oops, like, there goes my cover. So I was like, oh, well. So I just ran in, like, went behind cover and just popped out from behind places and mowed guys down. But you got your dog there. You can pet your dog, send him out to chew people up. Or if you're being attacked, he'll just naturally travel around to places.
Yeah, I went with the dog, too. Huber had a different character that he was talking about.
Oh, interesting. I'm curious. Yeah, I'd like to bounce this off Huber and see, like, how his experience varied. But I'm excited about this game, and it's felt a lot like previous Far Cries that I've had. Switching between weapons was really easy.
Yeah.
I destroyed this town. Like, I with extreme prejudice, just boom, 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 and went through. And just because of that, it was very quick. And so it was like putting the controller down. I'm like, oh, that was.
Wait,
that was
so all
brief.
they had you do was the town? You didn't do the rest of it?
So maybe I did. Yeah, maybe that was just the slice that was at the Sony event.
Okay, yeah, because the behind closed doors demo was quite a bit longer. Like, the town was the beginning of it, and then they let you wander around pretty much as you wanted to.
So you've gone through that in our coverage.
Yeah.
So this did not raise or lower my expectations of Far Cry 5. It's still a game I want.
I think the one thing that I kind of started to talk about and then I got distracted or something was I was talking about how they've gotten rid of towers in Far Cry 5.
Although the first thing you do is climb a tower in the demo.
Yeah, well, I mean,
a water tower.
You can, but you don't have to.
But it doesn't activate the same way classic.
Right. It doesn't make this big spread of icons across your map for a region. So what they do instead is they introduce everything kind of contextually. So, if somebody you talk to tells you there's an airfield down the road, then that airfield pops up on your map. If you find a sign, like a deer crossing sign, then it's like, oh, deer are in this area, you can hunt deer. If you find a note somewhere that tells you about a treasure chest or a cave or something, then that's how you get that information. So I like it because it's exploring encourages more exploring rather than it's like, oh, here's just a bunch of stuff on your map, go do all of it.
Right.
But it's a weird. Far Cry is always a weird split thing because I enjoy it mechanically. I enjoy it as a sandbox. I don't typically care that much for the story.
Yep.
And this one is not doing anything more to.
And while I don't necessarily have a problem with it, I know a lot of people are like, "How controversial? How horrible, Ubisoft?"
Right.
It's like I don't have that problem, but at the same time, tone it down a little bit, Ubisoft. Like, it's just a little too extreme. Like the big poster that they had of like Last Supper, it was like. Got it. Like, you don't want advertising to be that obvious.
Extreme.
You kind of want to dig into things.
Sure. It's just like it's laying too. It's revealing its hand too readily.
Right.
Basically, is what you're saying. I see.
So yeah, it came out a little strong for that, but and didn't get to do the behind the closed door stuff. But just because I insisted, I fought for Far Cry 4 to beat the first Wolfenstein for the best first-person shooter of that year. I will immediately transition from this into the much better demo, in the game I am probably anticipating more, Wolfenstein New Colossus, which I got to play the behind the closed doors demo, which I know Hubert did. There's no way I could describe a game more excitedly than Hubert
How
does.
was the smoothie, Jones?
The smoothie?
Did they not give you the smoothie?
I didn't get a smoothie. And people talked to me about it beforehand.
Oh my
The
gosh.
shake, the milkshake.
Well, but wait,
yeah.
no, the shake was at the booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So you
milkshake.
got in line, you get
Yeah,
the
yeah.
shake.
Oh, but they didn't give any
Did
smoothies.
Hubert get a shake?
Yeah, Huber got a shake. I mean, you nominated Far Cry 4 over New Order, so just desserts. As far
I
as
don't
I'm
think he
concerned.
heard that. He was out the door.
That's okay.
Well, but this demo is still great and so funny. I just like, I don't want to say violence is funny in every context. Like, you know, ending human life is not like, you know, something to celebrate. But like, man, all those Nazis walking into those traps and blowing up. There's one cutscene where this guy's like giving me information in the background, just one after the other. Especially like the last one's like tiptoeing. He's like, maybe if I sneak, you know. I really enjoyed that. And I think one thing I liked, and I remember in the beginnings of game journalism, when I was first noticing criticism of games,
Okay.
I remember one thing that really stuck with me when people talk about Metroid, and they'd be like, there's just some dumb reason that they had why Samus doesn't have her powers, and she's got to get that back. Like a sequel that doesn't seem to remember that the other game came before it.
Right.
And you finished Wolfenstein extremely powerful, you know, and you have a lot of crazy tools. They throw a lot of stuff right at the last minute that you're just like, I'm a god, I can do all this great stuff. So it's like, okay, well, we're going into Wolfenstein. Based on how the first game ended, I didn't necessarily know if we were getting a sequel to that. And so going into this, it's like, okay, well, what happened to that thing? Oh, there it is. And I was like, oh, well, how do you explain this character? Oh, there they are. You know, and I'm like, great. Like, I think it was one of my favorite things about going into that demo was like, this feels like exactly where we left off. And even more so kind of adding the drama of like, you know, where did these characters go, you know, and like reuniting with them. I'm so excited for this game. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with that. The Crew 2,
so excited.
how much have we talked about?
Oh,
Little
I
bit.
went pretty deep into it, but yeah, it's so good.
This Crew 2 is fascinating for me because it was one of the first times I can remember in recent memory where they did something in a trailer where I was like, okay, CG trailers, that's crazy. And then I got into the game and I was like, oh, you can actually do that in the game? And that was this like Inception, like,
Oh, so that I actually
the
didn't
world's
see. Yeah.
crazy. You didn't see that? Because I did the Crew 2 like at the booth. Like this was not behind closed doors. I like waited in line
Not
to
in
play Crew 2.
gameplay. Like I did like the introduction thing, and then I saw like a scene where they did that, but I didn't see it in gameplay at
So if
all.
you remember,
I don't know what
remember
that's
what we're
about.
talking about. Remember the scene in the Inception where like New York like folds on itself
Yeah.
and you can see the buildings coming up. And they do that in the trailer. And I was like, okay, I get it. You know, like you're going across the open world. They're demonstrating in a fun CG way that the camera's gonna. It's the same move. We're gonna switch to Arizona and show
Yeah.
that stuff off. And then you do that in games. So like when I finished. The way the demo was set up, which I thought was very smart to sell this game at E3, you drove, and then you got in a boat, and then you got in a plane, and they were done. And they just seamlessly transitioned. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go out to a menu, and now I'll do the boat demo, and then load that. And so you're driving, and it finishes, and I'm on a bridge, and then the water like goes up, and the bridge is like folding up in front of me as I'm driving toward it. And then once I hit a point, the camera shifted and moved along to where the boat was, and then I just jumped right into that boat and did the boat race. Finished the boat race, does the same thing, flips up into the sky, and like did the plane. And all of those controlled really well. If I had all the time in the world, man, like you were talking about your RPG backlog, I would totally play all of the
Right.
Crew. I love open world games. I love it's the US,
Don't play the
it's the
Crew.
country of my
Play the
birth.
Crew too.
Right. Like, well, that's the thing. It's like, okay, well now maybe this is the opportunity. But just seeing how that world is constructed, like the one concern that I have actually that I didn't get from the demo, but like. Is it going to be the same world? Because it's the U.S. So like, how much are they going to shake up the
So
U.S.?
yes and no.
Okay.
So the map, the general layout is the same, including the ridiculous size of Florida. But because they've basically redone like all the roads and tracks.
Okay.
Because the routes, the way the races are constructed, are way different than the way they were in the first game. Having to redo the waterways to account for the boats, having to put in the stuff for the plane, in a very, very general sense, like the same map is there, but the way all the roads are is super different.
I am really excited about the Crew 2 because the response that it has gotten has been surprising to me. I feel like everybody kind of watched the E3 trailer, and maybe people who knew about the crew and liked the crew were more into it, but it just seemed like the general response, especially from the Allies, was, okay, this isn't super surprising. King of Motorsports, there wasn't anything that like blew our minds in the trailer, but like you were saying, you just had such a raw, good time with it. And you're like, I want to play more because of how well they control, how much I got to do, how good it looked. Yeah, it seems like just a fun time.
I love the concept of a sports game where if I'm flying in a plane in a mission and I'm looking down, I see a river, it's like, I wonder if there's a race down there. You know, and then like, or maybe later I don't wonder that, but then do a race and it's like, oh, I remember flying over this part. Okay, oh, I know where that turn is. I go off a waterfall over
But here's
here,
the thing,
you know?
I don't know if you got to do it because I think you only got the first part of the demo out there. But if you're not in a race and you're flying over that river and you look, you know, it's like, oh, I'd like to go check that out. You just hold the stick and you turn into a boat and you drop into the river.
That's cool.
It's perfect.
That's awesome. Okay, one final game from me. We have more analysis to do, obviously. We got a couple of things we're going to pick up possibly Tuesday night during our group stream. Where we're going to be picking our awards for the best of E3 2017. We have a community comments episode that I'm going to read when my voice comes back. And the final part of Judge Jones, which part 3, which I'm going to cut tonight, will go up today, along with all of the other parts of Judge Jones that you can watch on YouTube. I think there's like 5 or 6 games. Some Oculus stuff, some other games that had late embargoes. Sonic Forces, I couldn't talk about because the embargo was up on Wednesday, I think.
There's one game specifically that I'm hoping you're going to say.
Oh yeah? What is that?
Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Fighters.
Oh no, I would have loved to check that out.
Okay.
But that I bow to the experts of that franchise. But I think you are going to like the franchise that I'm going to bring up.
Okay, the reason why I want you to play it is like I want you, who has no experience with it, to offer an outsider perspective and see how it. Yeah,
we're gonna group stream that. I mean, come on, we're
gonna group stream that forever.
Everybody's Golf.
Yeah.
Oh,
really? I actually did get to play Everybody's Golf. I'm so okay. I'm glad we're talking about Everybody's Golf. Yes.
This is a franchise that I have loved from afar, but have never really dug into, and I'm always wondering every time there's a new entry, is this the time?
Yeah.
And so I like boot up the demo right before the Sony press conference, and I'm like, okay, what weird control scheme are they going to teach me to try to do this? And they're like, oh, it's the control scheme you know and love, baby. It's just the 3 button.
Yeah.
You just click that button 3 times, and you know, tee your way to happiness.
Yep.
And I loved it. I couldn't stop playing. I think I played this the most out of all of the demos that were there before the Sony press conference because there was this cozy little couch there and big screen.
It is irrepressibly jolly. Like you could be having the worst day of your life and you're playing Everybody's Golf and you're like, I guess it's fine.
I love people are just running around the field and like I'm not sure how multiplayer works. Like is that like is it the kind of thing where it's always online where you're always playing around people and you can like maybe turn that off or like. When I see other little people that have little names above them, just like running around, and I can see them on other, what's one I'm looking for? Holes.
So,
or like
I don't know, but the impression that I got from that demo is that something that you can do offline, or you can get the same experience online, and it will be actually people that are going and teeing off their own thing. But in the demo that we played, that was not online at all.
Sure.
So.
But it was just. Having not that much experience with this franchise and sitting down and picking it up and it's like riding a bike. I'm just like, oh, yep, and just like immediately getting comfortable with the game. And bringing it up because it's exciting to bring up after talking about things like Assassin's Creed Origins and Far Cry 5. But I wonder, is this the time? Do we have a release date? Do we know? Like,
yeah, we do. I don't remember what it is.
I wonder if like this is the time where I'm actually like, I think a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. here on twitch.tv/EasyAllies, you might see me dropping in some Everybody's Golf. And playing that because it's beautiful and it's fun and it looks like something that if there's a lot of customization in there with the characters and there's a lot of different course variety.
In the demo you played as Shuhei Yoshida, that was fun.
Oh yeah.
Or I did. I don't know if you got the same thing.
He was in there. I saw someone else playing as him, but I did not play as him in the demo. But there it is. There was my E3 2017.
Nice.
Anything else to wrap up before we wrap up?
No,
the wrap up.
I think I actually haven't forgotten anything else. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we do have. There are a couple of things from some of the other allies that they're like.
August 29th release date. Thanks, Satoshi.
Yeah, 4 or 5 people that have like one thing or a couple of things they just want to go over really quickly. So we'll try to rope them in for something. Hopefully, we can find time on Tuesday for all of that. But we'll be working. I'll be working the next couple of days on splitting out a couple of the. Individual conversations into their own videos and stuff, so you can find everything at youtube.com/easyallies and the dream is for everything from E3 to be on that playlist and to be taken care of by Wednesday or so. Well, actually, probably the betting special will be probably the last thing when we get those results, whenever that's finished being cut.
All right. One thing that we have definitely learned a lot. I have a warm place in my heart following the E3 because I've learned so much about Easy Allies and so much about different ways we can do E3, how all of our roles should be played during E3, with playing to our strengths, here we are on Saturday doing an unscheduled stream because there's just so much stuff left over. Yeah. And we definitely focus on things like, Trailer Jones and Frame Trap and Friend Code in the podcast. And we definitely learned some lessons about, how to possibly fit in all of our impressions in the amount of time that we have. Sleep is a big factor. It's it's fun to be delirious, during the show, but it's also nice to take a step back and look at what you want to see, dear viewers of Easy Allies, and what kind of reporting you want from us on the show, and what kind of reporting we can do, and what plays best, when we are discoursing with each other and delivering this, all of these awesome impressions to you. And to keep in mind, there's still games we didn't play. There's still, stuff that we're going to be talking about forever because we don't know when we're going to get the next update on this, some of these franchises.
Well, I was looking over my list, and we did roughly about 50 appointments at the show floor. There were still another 30 or 40 invitations that I either wasn't able to schedule or that nobody was particularly interested in.
I think I played about 80 games total. Between Judges Week and the actual show. Whew. But there's still so much going on, and so it can be kind of chaotic. And so I just want to take this moment and just say thank you for all the support that we're getting. Financial support, you can subscribe to us obviously here on Twitch, and we appreciate that. But we are funded through patreon.com/EasyAllies primarily, and we've seen that funding and seen that support go up since we started, and of course saw a lot of exposure here at E3. And so just want to say thank you for the feedback as always. Leave comments, obviously jump in the chat, but let us know what you thought of E3 and let us know of ways we can make it E3 2018 even better. And of course, we have lots of fun events this summer. We got PAX coming up, we got Comic-Con, we got PSX at the end of the year. We know that's gonna be in Anaheim. Yes.
We do. Nice.
Yeah, they announced that on the 12th. I missed that. I actually looked that up today. They slipped that in right before the show, so we know that it's going to be December 9th and 10th, I believe, is PSX this year at the Anaheim Convention Center. So lots of fun stuff to come up, and this crazy Easy Allies thing, keeps growing and keeps evolving because of not just the decisions that we make, but decisions we make based on your feedback. And that is as invaluable as the financial support, but I'm not knocking that financial support. It's pretty great too. So thank you so much for tuning in to this impromptu Saturday wrap-up stream. Thank you, Ben, for driving all the way down here to check stuff out. Thank you, Blood, for taking the amazing detailed notes as you do. And thank you so much for watching. Maybe you take them out, and I will hit the button.
Yeah. And as always, you can keep an eye on all of our schedule, and actually a lot of the video playlists. We talk about a schedule a lot, but the playlists, for the most part, are also on easyallies.com. So head over there, and we'll be back with some more E3 goodness on Tuesday night, and we'll have some of our regular streams starting back up even before then. So
stay tuned for more Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Stormblood.
Damiani wakes up.
Time to make that.
The sad thing is Damiani, even when he's not streaming, he's still playing. So I don't know how sleep works with that man, but there you go. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.